Clerk, we're ready to go. All right. And good morning, everyone. Happy International Women's Day, March 8th, to all of our allies and women this morning. We are here today at Committee of Council, and all members are present, except I believe Councillor Tour won't be joining us today. Okay, thank you very much. So our next item of the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do any members wish to add anything to the agenda today? I have Councillor Singh, Mayor Brown, followed by Councillor Vicente. Councillor Deputy Mayor Singh, go ahead.
Yeah, just continuing last week's discussion on the workshop for community hubs. I just have an item to actually request a workshop, just a motion for community hubs. So.
Thank you. So that's a motion / discussion item from Deputy Mayor Singh regarding the workshop.
Are they called community hubs?
Anything further, Mayor? Okay, Mayor Brown.
Yes, I have an item I'd like to add to correspondence and a corresponding item for discussion on the Canadian Running Series, a letter that we received yesterday from the organizers of the Toronto Waterfront Marathon.
Exciting. Thank you, Mayor Brown. Next, Councillor Vicente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Happy International Women's Day to all. I would like to add a discussion item on snow clearing operations. Thank you.
Also very exciting. Councillor, oh, I think that's it. No more for any other members want to add anything further to the agenda? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, any further revisions to the agenda?
Through you, Chair Santos, just to advise that Delegation 6.3 on the agenda from TEDx, Brampton Board of Directors, has been withdrawn. They'll be, I believe, requesting to delegate at a future meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. So I have a motion from Councillor Keenan to move to approve today's agenda. Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. That motion carries. Declarations of Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Do any members have any declarations of conflict of interest today? I see none. The clerk will so note. Our next item is consent. As part of our consent motion, I will read each agenda item that is subject to the consent motion, and any member may verbally identify the item to be held for debate during the meeting. Item number 9.2.1, staff report, appointments to the Medical Technology MedTech Advisory Committee, held by Councillor Singh. 10.2.1, staff report regarding corporate events listings 2023 to 2026. I may hold that one for myself, sorry. 10.3.1, discussion item request of Regional Councillor Santos. That's me, so that's held. 11.1.1 is also held, staff presentation on active transportation master plan, as well as 11.2.1 corresponding report. Next, 11.2.2 staff report request to begin procurement 2023 road resurfacing all wards, hold. Held for Councillor Keenan. 11.2.3 staff report request to begin procurement for plumbing services at various city facilities for a 3-year period. Consent. 11.3.1 is held for discussion from Councillor Power. 11.4.1 correspondence from Laura Hall, Director of Corporate Services, Town Clerk, Town of Caledon, regarding new transit service on Dixie Road north of Mayfield Road. In consent. The clerk will now summarize those items held by members in consideration or not part of the consent motion prior to the approval of this motion. Mr. Clerk, go ahead.
Through you, Chair Santos, so just for simplicity, I'll just identify the 2 items to be included in the consent motion with the balance of the agenda to be considered by committee during today's meeting. 11.2.3, the staff report on a request to begin procurement for plumbing services at various city facilities for a 3-year period, and 11.4.1, correspondence from the Town of Caledon regarding new transit service on Dixie Road north of Mayfield. Those are the 2 items for consent.
Thank you so much. I have a motion moved by Councillor Medeiros to approve the consent motion. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. Our next item of the agenda is public delegations. And today we have a few delegations before us, and every delegation has up to 5 minutes. The running clock is right here to my shoulder on the left. Our first delegation is from Neil Sega, Brampton resident, regarding vandalism attack on the Sri Gauri Shankar Mandir in Brampton and hate crimes against the Hindu community. Welcome. Neil, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Mayor Brown. Good morning to all the councillors. Let me start by wishing the wonderful women happy International Women's Day. And I would also like to express my thanks for providing me a opportunity to delegate on the issue of continued attacks on Hindu temples and increase in incidents of anti-Hindu hate crime. To add on, I would also like to add to thank the Council for passing resolution to include Hindu phobia under anti-racism policy on March the 1st. That was a very good step in the right direction. Thanks, councillors and everyone, for that. What we have witnessed in the past 6 months is 3 major incidents of anti-Hindu hate crime in the form of graffiti attack on 3 Hindu temples, BAPS, Etobicoke, Lakshmi Narayan Temple in Brampton, and Ram Mandir Temple in Mississauga. It was all over the news. Besides, we have witnessed rampant incidences of anti-Hindu hate during the 2 Khalistan referendums carried out last year in September and in November. What we have seen is, and what I've analyzed is, such activities have increased manifold after the referendums were allowed to take place on public-funded recreation centers. The first one in September took place in Go Meadows in Brampton, and the second one took place at the Paul Coffee Arena in Mississauga in November last year. Now, during those, we saw a lot of hate signages, we saw a lot of hate crime against Hindus during that particular referendums. There were mobile truck signages spreading hatred specifically against Hindus through misinformation and falsehood that read one sign. In fact, there was a sign which was completely false and spreading misinformation. It read, Hindu mobs burned 8-month-old 6 babies alive. There were banners as well spreading the same message at several locations in the Peel region. Telephone calls to city to stop this anti-Hindu hate went unheeded. The police should have acted immediately, promptly to get these signages removed and book agencies that were behind placing these signages. On the day of the 2 referendums, September and November, the area outside the venues appeared highly threatening, intimidating. The crowd was very aggressive. And they were carrying banners, they were carrying posters, loudly chanting slogans against Hindus and India. We have never witnessed such anti-Hindu hate crime carried out so blatantly to this extent against any religion or community in Canada. Unprecedented, I would say. Our peace-loving, hardworking, and law-abiding Hindu community remains traumatized. We are deeply hurt and disappointed at the lack of apathy and inaction on the part of law enforcement and political leadership to control such activities of anti-Hindu hate crime. To prevent anti-Hindu hate crime, such referendums should not be allowed to take place on Canadian soil, especially the places of public places like recreation centers should not be allowed to be used for referendums, as it gives an opportunity for anti-Hindu hate mongers to promote their divisive agenda and divide society. I would like to go to the extent of urging the government to ban SFJ, which is Sex for Justice in Canada, that directly or indirectly promotes hate against Hindus. Hindus have a right to live with dignity and respect. We need visible actions from law enforcement agencies and political leadership to prevent anti-Hindu hate crime. Actions expected are the perpetrators of anti-Hindu hate crime should be caught, their identities revealed, and they should be punished as per provisions of the law. This will serve as a deterrent to anyone who tries to indulge in such cowardly acts. Khalistan referendums that cause anti-Hindu hate should not be allowed to take place in Canadian soil. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Neil. And I have, if you can just stay here for us for a second, we do have a question from members of council. Mayor Brown, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Santos, and let me just say that it was, and we had a conference 2 weeks ago where myself and Councillor Paleshi and Councillor Keenan, along with Hindu leaders, said there's zero space or tolerance for any intimidation at a Hindu place of worship. Any place of worship, and the Chief Nish has reiterated that we have no tolerance for hate crimes, and no place of worship should be vandalized. And I think we were the first city to speak up about that. What's happened at the Vishnu Mandir in Richmond Hill the BAPS Mandir in Toronto, the RAM Mandir in Mississauga, and the Gauri Shankar Mandir in Brampton is unacceptable, and I am confident who is ever responsible will be held accountable. I would note that the chief has said, don't assume who's responsible, let the investigation unfold, but they have dedicated resources to finding those responsible. I would note, and I want to correct this because sometimes I see this online, the city should ban signs. The city doesn't have that legal right. We have a freedom of expression under the charter, and so they're saying, I had emails saying, I want the police to charge these individuals. The police have responded saying that is not a crime. We have freedom of expression in Canada. There's no crime committed, and if we start to regulate what can be said in a speech or a sign, then we are ignoring our own Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And so we have that very clear from the police. There was no crime. It's consistent with the Charter. And just like the Bloc Québécois that wants to, their mission is to divide Canada, they still are allowed to rent rooms and put up signs and have debate. And so the legal opinion is very clear. This is not a city right. We have no role to ban that. And I'm going to refer this to our city solicitor just so you can hear. Does the city have any right to diminish the freedom of expression or the ability to put signs up in a debate like this, or restrict what group can rent a facility? Because I think that clarification from our legal department would help you understand what is a municipal power and what isn't, in terms of we have no legal authority to abridge the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
I appreciate the response to Mayor Brown to this. If you don't mind, can I just speak a word on this? One point I wanted to raise was that, yes, everybody has freedom of expression, no doubt about that. They can place signages, but signages which promote hatred against Hindus, that seems to be objectionable. The signage which specifically mentioned Hindu mobs killed 8-month-old 6 babies alive. What does that promote? That promotes anti-Hindu hate. So that is what I was referring to, that these kind of signages should be not allowed. That was the point I was saying. Thanks.
Through the chair to respond to the mayor's question. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms is part of our constitution and applies to all levels of government. And the municipality is bound by it, and freedom of expression is a very highly protected right under the charter. And so I can't speak to any specific fact scenario, but generally speaking, it's a very, very high bar for government to interfere in people's freedom of expression.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And so I have a motion from Mayor Brown to receive the delegation. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. Next item is 6.2, delegations regarding International Women's Day, women-owned small businesses supported in Brampton. And today we have Julianne Berry, owner of Reviler African Fashion and Accessories, and Lydia Dawson and Jessica Dawson Gaglione, owners of My Own Design Dance Boutique. And as they get online or make their way to the floor, I will say that our celebrations today for International Women's Day at City Hall begin at 2:00 p.m. in a market downstairs, where we are highlighting many women-owned small businesses, followed by events this evening and a program also acknowledging Mayor Susan Fennell at 6 p.m. this evening. And so Juliana and Lydia, welcome. You have 5 minutes for your delegation.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I just want to thank everybody here at the City of Brampton and the Council and the My Main Street Media for inviting us here today to speak on International Women's Day, so thank you for this. I'm Jessica, actually, and this is my mom, Lydia, and our business is Mod Dancewear and Boutique, and we've been a family-owned and operated business in Brampton for the past 10 plus years, and we're now actually the only dancewear shop in all of Brampton. We actually promote healthy, active lifestyle and mindful movement. We serve a very niche industry of a lot of performing artists and athletes, and that mainly revolves around women and young girls. We love to support and promote other women-owned businesses as well. And we especially we love promoting Canadian businesses too. We look for and we carry many brands and promote the same values as us. And we also have a lot of other small businesses that we offer at our boutique that are also locally made, eco-friendly, and ethically made as well. So by supporting us, you're actually supporting many other women-owned businesses that are in our community as well. Being involved with the performing arts industry, we also interact with a lot of teens and young girls, and so we like to promote healthy body image, the importance of self-care and mental health as well. And we actually believe that this is a very good thing to instill into the next generation as well of all the young kids that are coming up. We believe that mindful movement can be a really big part of supporting and encouraging others to have a healthy self-image. And we also offer a lot of employment to people as well, being a retail store. We look for people that also have a really good understanding of our industry. And again, those are also a lot of women and girls that either skate or dance or do some kind of performing arts. And so we've offered them positions, jobs, and training as well.
And I'm Lydia, and I would like to speak to the council and also very much appreciate the Entrepreneur Center. As Jessica mentioned, we've been in business for about 10 years, and in the beginning, the Entrepreneur Center was really beneficial and important to us because it offered resources and workshops and training and assistance in getting a business started. And anybody who's looking to start a business, they need that center and they need the people that are there, and they're the ones that invited us to speak here today, which is really great. We are happy to do that. And they also have been instrumental in getting us the grant for the My Main Street. My Main Street. And we are so appreciative of that because we've managed, coming out of COVID, as I'm sure a lot of people understand, small businesses had to really work hard to survive, and we did. And this money that we're getting in this grant is so much needed to bring in new equipment, to improve our space, and to help our staff have a better space to work in. It is allowing us to move into other areas, like we've got in yoga equipment, we've got some camera equipment that we can now use to promote our stuff better and more efficiently. And we are just so happy that they are there, and we would appreciate Brampton continuing to have the Entrepreneurial Center available to other small businesses in the city in the future, because we want to use them as well going forward whenever we need them. So thank you for allowing us to be here today, and I look forward to being a part of Brampton and supporting other small businesses as well in this city. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julianne and Lydia, for the delegation. I don't have any questions, but on behalf of Chair and Councillor Tour and myself as Vice Chair of Economic Development, thank you for coming in for your delegation. I do have one question. How is it that women, small businesses, post pandemic have had a struggle in terms of recovery of their small business?
Yes.
And then also, what more can the city do to specifically help women small businesses in the city?
I think one of the ways that we can be helped is by encouraging people to shop small. If you know, there are programs that we're a member of the CFIB, and they have a program annually that encourages people to shop in small shops rather than in the big box stores. Or on Amazon.
Right.
We also have a website, and you know, they can shop on our website as opposed to on Amazon. We ship across the country. We really, you know, just encouraging people in Brampton to shop in Brampton and shop your Main Street stores in Brampton, I think, is some way that the city can definitely help us out.
And we can start today at 2 p.m.
You bet.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brar.
I did have a question. So
Sure.
Thank you so much for bringing small businesses, especially women-owned. It's so important to see a mother-daughter duo. It's amazing to see that and the strength that you put into your daughter to incorporate that. We empower our daughters. One question I had was, I know we're trying to get people to shop small. I know for a lot of mothers or people who don't have support, it's easier just to shop at those big box stores. You go to the one store. How can we make it accessible for those who cannot shop small because they simply can't be going to that many shops with their kids with them, or just time for staff maybe, or?
Yeah, we've done events where we go to the location and allow people to shop there. Like we deal with dance studios. We've done markets. So if there's like a local market, like a spring market, we can be there as part of the group, and that way they can pick up their things all in one place. And we also have our website. So they can order online and we can ship to their door. So that helps a lot with being able to be accessible. And we do have specials, and we're just starting a loyalty program so people can earn points on everything they purchase. So that helps financially as well, because you earn the points and then you can get your items for free with your points. I'm a lover of points. I use them all the time.
No, thank you for that. I think we still have a lot of work to do, making sure we can make it easier for people to shop small. So I think we'll work together and see how we can get that done. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Motion from Councillor Brar to receive the delegation. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? And that carries. Our next delegation, I believe, Mr. Clerk, is 6.5. A delegation from Dale Lang, Committee Secretary from Bike Brampton. And it also has to do with 11.1.1 and 11.2.1, a presentation and a report. Oh, Julianne Berry, are you here? She's sick. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, thank you. And so as we have a related staff presentation on this item, in accordance with our procedural rules, we will receive the staff presentation first, followed by the delegation by Dale. And so Nelson Cadet will be providing that presentation before the delegation, and Nelson is the Acting Senior Manager of Integrated City Planning, Building, and Growth Management. Welcome, Nelson, on another topic that I'm a big fan of.
All right. Thank you, and good morning, Chair and members of Council. My name is Nelson Cadet. I'm the Active Transportation Project Manager for the city, and I'm also backfilling as the Acting Senior Manager of Transportation Planning. The intent of the presentation and the accompanying report today is to provide committee with an update on the implementation of the Active Transportation Master Plan. So in the first quarter of every year, over the last 3 years, we've provided this report, an annual report, that summarizes the scope of active transportation elements that were implemented in the previous year, as well as outlining a program for the current year in advance of the construction season. The contents of this report has been shared with the Brampton Cycling Advisory Committee and the broader cycling community, and feedback has been incorporated into the 2023 program. Perfect. So given that the ATMP was endorsed almost 3.5 years ago, and with the new members this term of council, this year's annual report reintroduced some background information on why the investment in active transportation is so important in the city. From a health benefit, by 2026, it is said that 18% of Ontario residents will have diabetes. Peel residents have historically higher rates of diabetes when compared to others in the province, with the highest rates among those living in Brampton. Many of the Peel residents spend the vast majority of their day commuting by car, working in sedentary jobs, and which leave little opportunity for physical activity. And we know that physical activity and daily physical activity is important to help prevent chronic diseases such as diabetes. Active transportation can help Brampton residents be more physically active by building physical activity into their everyday activities, or everyday lives, sorry. From the perspective of environmental impacts, Brampton's largest user of energy and emitters of greenhouse gases is the transportation sector. So travel choices can have a significant impact on GHG emissions and energy consumption. In Brampton, automobiles are used for over 80% of the trips, so proper planning and design of our transportation networks, including transportation networks moving forward, is critical in creating viable, low-emission alternatives to the car, such as transit, cycling, and walking. From the lens of integrating transportation and land use planning, there's a finite limit to how much we can or should widen our roads to accommodate anticipated travel demand of the private motor vehicle, as it is impossible for any city to build its way out of congestion. If we are to better manage the challenges of congestion over the long term and build a viable, vibrant, and safe community, then we must refocus, our collective mindset when it comes to mobility is required. So a reshift or a refocus on our collective mindset. So as we move forward, the focus for mobility in the city should plan for mobility solutions that support compact, high-density, mixed land use. It should prioritize infrastructure improvements connecting transit and active transportation networks, and design great streets for people that emphasize strong neighborhood image and identity. From a road safety perspective, in addition to providing dedicated space for people on bikes, the introduction of bike lanes has also helped us to calm traffic by placing roads on road diets. Recent road diet projects have resulted in a decrease in the number of vehicles as well as vehicle speeds, making roads safer for pedestrians and cyclists as well as the motorists. Incorporating road diets into communities is consistent with the Vision Zero principle that road safety should be prioritized over other factors such as cost, speed, and convenience. And finally, from a transportation equity lens, active transportation infrastructure not only supports those who desire to travel car-free, but also those that cannot drive or afford to drive and rely on alternate modes. Next slide, please. Key outcomes we expect from the Active Transportation Master Plan are improved safety for walking and cycling, travel options for residents of all ages and abilities, maximized usage of the network, efficient investment in the network, and improved access to transit, supporting the first and last mile. The Active Transportation Master Plan identifies a future AT network length of 866 kilometers, which provides us with a target for our current key performance indicator that measures our implementation progress. To date, 530 kilometers of the targeted 866 kilometers has been completed. Recognizing that the ultimate goal, however, is an increase in ridership and a shift in people's travel choice away from the automobile, the city has also made investments in data collection specific to active transportation. We'll be installing 4 new permanent pedestrian and bicycle counters along major city trails. We're testing new video technology at 3 intersections in the city, and we're working on a program to introduce bicycle and pedestrian counters at all of our pedestrian crossovers. In addition to the investments in physical counters, the city is also looking into the use of big data from sources such as the smartphones, navigation apps, such as Waze and Google Maps, and in-car navigation displays. This data can be used to measure the uptake of the cycling infrastructure and provide us with before and after comparisons to measure the impacts of the active transportation infrastructure on the overall network. Next slide, please. This map represents the progress made in implementing the cycling infrastructure last term of council. So the blue lines represent all of the linear infrastructure, which include bicycle lanes, recreational trails, multi-use paths, and urban shoulders, as well as shared roadways. And they were implemented between the years of 2019 to 2022. So during the previous term of council, approximately 62 kilometers of the city cycling network was implemented. Next slide, please. So specific to 2022, this map represents the infrastructure that was implemented as a part of last year's program. Just quickly going through the legend, the blue lines represent, again, those linear infrastructure pieces. The pink lines, and you'll see 2 or 3 of them, they represent linear infrastructure along regional roads. The purple circles, pedestrian crossovers. The red circles represent curb cuts and curb depressions that were introduced as a part of the road resurfacing program. Blue circles, new traffic control signals. And finally, the pink circles are school crossings, which were upgraded to meet AODA requirements. Next slide, please. So in summary, through the 2022 implementation program, the city introduced 11.9 kilometers of linear cycling infrastructure. 2 examples are shown on the slide in the bottom right. Those are the buffered bike lanes on Hanover Road, and the bottom centered are the buffered bike lanes on Hilldale Crescent. We also implemented 6 new pedestrian crossovers, and again, an example is provided there. That's the pedestrian crossover implemented on Peel Village Parkway at Charles F. Watson and Family Gardens. Also in 2022, we introduced curb depressions at 15 new locations, 3 upgraded school crosswalks, 3 new traffic control signals, and last year's capital budget included approximately $8.6 million dedicated to active transportation. Next slide, please. Now, shifting the focus to 2023 and the program plan for 2023, the proposed 2023 capital budget includes approximately $4.5 million dedicated to active infrastructure. The network elements of the ATMP implementation strategy are budgeted and delivered in partnership with Planning, Building, and Growth Management, Public Works and Engineering, and Community Services. The totals showed here are actually the AT components of each of those projects. Next slide, please. So again, this map represents the 2023 Active Transportation Implementation Program. Again, the blue lines represent the linear infrastructure. For the most part, the new linear infrastructure plan for this year will be delivered through the road resurfacing program and the reoccurring ATMP infill program, which is focused on delivering a citywide cycling network. The orange line represents the protected bike lanes that will be implemented along the east-west cycling corridor. The final design of that east-west cycling corridor includes physically separated bicycle lanes, replacing the current interim bike lanes. Cyclists will be separated from the motor vehicles by precast concrete curbs. This year, the protected bike lanes will be introduced along Howden between Williams and Dixie, Vauden between Center and Howden, Hanover Road between Howden Boulevard and Central Park. There are other sections of the east-west cycling corridor which we won't be able to upgrade to protected bike lanes because they're subject to utility improvements by the Region of Peel. Another implementation program of the ATMP is the Fix-It program, which focuses on enhancing existing network existing network by completing critical gaps with proper active transportation crossings and access points at roadway intersections. Examples of this include those pedestrian crossovers, curb cuts, and traffic control signals. In the proposed 2023 capital budget, funding has been allocated to deliver phase 2 of the Fix-It program. The circles on this map depict the Fix-It improvements that will be delivered through this capital project, as well as other construction and maintenance opportunities. Examples of this, the green circles along Chinguacousy Road represent the traffic signal upgrades to accommodate bicycles. This work is being completed as a part of that Chinguacousy Road Zoom project. Blue circles on the map are all new traffic control signals. The purple circles are locations where there is new pedestrian crossovers, and the red circles represent enhancements to park paths and walkways where they meet the roadways. So these are typically curb depressions and appropriate signage. Next slide, please. So in summary, the 2023 implementation work plan includes 29.2 kilometers of linear infrastructure, 25 pedestrian crossovers, 23 curb depressions at park paths and trails, 13 signalized bicycle crossings, and 7 traffic control signals. To highlight a few of the programming pieces planned for 2023, Bike the Creek event this year will take place on June 10th. The first electric shared scooter program in the GTA will launch in Brampton this spring. And finally, Bike to Work Day is planned to return to downtown on June 1st, 2023 as a launch of Bike Month. The next slide. So similar to previous years, staff will ensure that appropriate communication plans or an appropriate communication plan is executed to ensure that all residents affected by these projects are advised of the direct impacts and the overall benefits of walking and cycling under the branding Streets for People. There are lists of the projects provided in the appendices of the report if you're interested in projects that are planned in your respective wards. And we also anticipate providing updates throughout the year as a part of our ward pairing meetings. So we hope that this has been informative, and thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you so much, Nelson, for the presentation. I think we have a question from Councillor Keenan. Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a quick question. The green circles down Chinguacousy.
Yes.
For cross ride upgrade. What is that exactly?
So in previous years, we had planned for the linear infrastructure. There's an existing multi-use path along the east, and it switches over to the west side of Chinguacousy Road. But at all of those intersections, there's an allowance for a pedestrian to walk. There's a crosswalk. With recent legislative changes, we're now allowed to provide crosswalks that are specific to bikes as well. So now the plan with the Chinguacousy Zoom Improvement Project is to incorporate those active transportation improvements and introduce those bicycle crossings as well as those pedestrian crossings at all of the signalized intersections along that corridor.
Oh, okay, great. Secondary question, and it's a reason that I held the report for the permanent. You said that we're changing, and I believe it's about 7 kilometers of bike lanes, if I can remember, Marlon, with our conversation, to being precast concrete down there.
Right.
And the reason I held the report is to find out, do you work with Public Works in a way of how are we snow clearing that small section? Is there a plan in place to do so? And if so, do you know it? Because then that will help me further down the line.
The advantage with that project specifically is it's a big wide roads, and there's a lot of space in those buffered areas that currently are just buffered, separated, providing physical separation. We took advantage of those, and the space remaining from the curb to the new precast curb is wide enough to accommodate our current winter plowing machinery. So we have machinery that will fit into that space to provide that plowing. One lesson learned from discussions with our road operations people as well as other neighboring municipalities is that they almost have to happen at the same time. So when we plow the road, it's critical that the bicycle lane gets plowed as well, because if the road were to be plowed, what we're learning from examples like in Oakville is that if we come in after the fact, it gives that opportunity to plow the street onto the bike lane, provides the opportunity to freeze and get difficult to remove. So it's important that they get programmed or coordinated to be maintained at the same time. So those are all lessons that will be worked into this pilot, and we plan on and reporting on the success or improvements required at the end of the year.
Okay, my final question, we have a budget piece for a study going down Chinguacousy. Is that study to implement bike lanes physical to what we're seeing everywhere else on Chinguacousy?
So the budget allocation is actually for the physical capital, so that will be active transportation related costs, physical construction costs, that will be transferred over to the PMs in our Public Works group.
But for that specific reason?
Right.
Okay, no more questions, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Nelson, for the presentation. And I'm going to admit that I made a mistake in that I skipped item 6.4, which was a delegation regarding another matter. But just to maintain the flow of what's happening right now, I spoke with the clerk. If it's okay, we'll have the delegation on this particular item. And I see that Julianne has also arrived from the previous delegation this morning. Thank you for joining us. We'll then move over to Julianne and then go back to 6.4. And to my colleagues and to the folks here today, I apologize for skipping 6.4. And so David and Dale, if you could please come up and just continue the flow on this particular item. And then Julianne, we will have you after that is over. Thank you. Go ahead, Dale.
Good morning, Chair Santos, members of council, staff, and the public. Next slide, please. When we started Bike Brampton 10 years ago, there were fewer than 10 short bike lanes going from nowhere to nowhere. Since the ATMP was endorsed by Council in 2019, we have worked collaboratively with city staff on expanding the network to create a safe means to commute throughout the city. We support staff's plans for 2023. Next slide, please. Building on-road cycling infrastructure is not for me, it's for this gentleman. I'll ride almost anywhere. It's this gentleman that we have to think about, the one that's pictured on the slide. He's likely commuting to work. Since Brampton Bike Hub's different spokes grand opening on August 18th last year, 1,450 diverse residents have been served. Since we got the key at the end of May, 1,125 volunteer hours have gone into preparing and operating the hub. Demand has exceeded our wildest dreams. The city has gotten tremendous value from their investment. Next slide, please. As cycling mode share increases, we need both paths and bike lanes to manage capacity. We are very pleased parts of the east-west cycling corridor, Vauden, Hanover, and Howden, as Nelson explained, these bike lanes will be protected this year. We're very pleased. Next slide, please. Staff has tried different intersection treatments to assess the best design. This intersection on Peter Robertson is an example of green paint and a clear delineation so drivers and cyclists know where they should be, and this makes right-hand turns safer. Consistent design gives better predictability for all of us. Next slide, please. We're working with bylaw and strategic communications on an education campaign so people understand why parking in bike lanes is dangerous for cyclists, particularly kids cycling to school, like the school ahead in that picture. Next slide, please. Cross rides are great. We shouldn't have to push the beg button and then have the signal turn yellow before we were halfway across the intersection. As you can actually see quite clearly, that's what's happened in those pictures. Signal timing should synchronize with the vehicle traffic, just like it is in our neighbors in Toronto, Peel, Mississauga, and Burlington. Next slide, please. The ATMP's continued installation of curb depressions provides accessibility for all users. We, in conclusion, support the AT plans for 2023. Next slide, please. The Informal Cycling Advisory Committee, as Nelson mentioned, has continued to meet monthly in kind support from the AT planning team. New this year are fun-themed community rides, so we're really changing it up to make it super, super interesting for the people who come. And this has been coordinated, quite thankfully, with other city departments, like the library, for example, and like Heritage. So you're welcome to join our rides. Next slide, please. We're thrilled to announce Bike the Creek, our 9th annual signature cycling event on June 10th. Next slide, please. Cycling Together at Bike the Creek is choosing a transportation option that aligns with our resilient communities theme and makes us appreciate our great outdoors. This also aligns with our ATMP, our 2040 vision, and the climate emergency. When we displayed with Brampton Tourism at the Outdoor Adventure Show a few weekends ago, we saw over 800 people in the 3-day event ranging from Windsor to Pembroke. There was much interest in Bike the Creek, even from folks as far away as 2 hours who said, yes, they're coming. Next slide, please. The 6 routes have been adjusted to showcase new infrastructure. From 6 kilometers to 67 kilometers, we have choices for all. Next slide, please. The online store opens April 17th. you too can get a snazzy jersey like what I'm wearing. And you can order it online. I do advise you, though, be very careful because they fit really tightly, like really tightly. So go up a size, make sure that you don't end up feeling like you've been stuffed into it. And please, I encourage you to promote the event in your newsletters and on social media. Next slide and final slide. David and I would love to escort you on a dignitary ride. We'll have 2 route lengths and can range a bike if you need one. It's not a race. We leave no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dale, for the delegation. We do have questions, and I see my son Leonard on the screen. He's so small. At that time. Councillor Pelletier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dale, for coming. I just wanted to highlight more of Bike the Creek, and I think, you know, from when this started, it's been so exciting to watch this completely explode, and have so many people coming from all over Canada just to take part in this ride. And I ask you the same question every year: what else can we do to make it that much better? Because it's getting to the point where we might even have to look at moving it and putting it somewhere else. I would never support that. I think it's happy at Jim Archdeacon Rec Center in Wards 2. But that being said, what else can we do to help and support? Through the chair, in answer to your question, Councillor Pelletier, we've actually got excellent cooperation from the City of Brampton. I hope I don't forget any of the departments. We're working with active transportation, BMO, the emergency response is doing our safety plan. We've got recreation. We've got Brampton tourism. We've got parks. Have I missed anybody? Have I missed any departments? Economic development, yes. Yes, because we're going after sponsors too. And so they're welcome to come to booths. Oh, and road engineering, of course. Yes. I think that's all. Can you think of any other departments we could possibly engage? Well, oh yes, strategic comms, absolutely, because we need them to promote the event. Absolutely. Excellent. TRCA is going to be a partner again this year?
Yes, TRCA, City of Mississauga, Town of Caledon, and of course Bike Brampton. Those are the partners, and Region Appeal is once again kicking in lunch for us. And who's more deserving than a bunch of hungry cyclists?
Absolutely. No, it's fantastic. And I just ask all members of council if you can get it in your newsletter, just to get out to the residents. That would be much appreciated. It's such a fantastic event, and I love going every year. It's wonderful. Thanks, Dale.
Thank you, Councillor Brar.
Great delegation. I'm kind of looking at the screen. I'm excited. How can we get the youth involved, especially the youngsters? I do have the 2 older kids, and they love cycling. So how can we get them involved? And look at the picture. There's more of adults, but maybe programs at schools. Just a thought. Yeah.
Okay. Through you, Chair. Councillor Brar, actually, this is a family event, and it's not a race. And so, yes, there's adults that come, but there's lots of families that come. And that's why our rides start at 6 kilometers. So we've got a 6 kilometer, a 12 kilometer, and then a 30 kilometer. I mean, like even the nature ride when it was 27 kilometers, we had some kid on his tricycle doing that. So it really is a family event. And they're absolutely encouraged.
Perfect, thank you. I was just wondering, how can we incorporate just this event, but just programs into schools? Like they're our future, want to get that habit of, going to school on a bike or any of those kind of programs.
Through you, Chair. Councillor Brar, we are very involved with schools. Before the pandemic, David and I delegated to, we did clinics, bike repair clinics. We did school assemblies to as many as 500 kids. We did 17 within the Bike Month window just before the pandemic. And now that Now, even last year, we had a few, not as many as we did prior to the pandemic. We also have a committee called the Peel Safe and Active Routes to School Committee that is definitely promoting walking and bicycling to school.
Perfect. I love that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Councillor Brar. And just to add, it is a very successful event, as Councillor Paleshi had shared, and part of it is because the list of organizations and levels of government that are collaborating to make it a success. I'm looking forward to attending, and Lennon started attending this event, and there are hundreds of families and kids who do attend. He started this event when he had training wheels. And so looking forward to it this year. And thank you for your delegation. Motion from Councillor Paleshi to receive the delegation. All those in favor, anyone opposed, that carries. Thank you so much. And then the next item, of course, is to receive the presentation as well as the corresponding report, 11.2.1, 11.2. Okay, so we're going to hold the report to receive the presentation then. Moved by Councillor Medeiros. All those in favor, anyone opposed, that carries. We'll deal with 11.2.1 later in the agenda. So back to Julianne, who is now here. Thank you, Julianne, for coming today. Sorry we missed you earlier. Mr. Clerk, procedurally, we're okay to have Julianne continue the delegation. Julianne, please go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Santos, members of the staff, and members of the public. My name is Julia Berry, and I am the owner of Reveille Afrique, which is an African fashion and accessories boutique located in Bramalea City Center. We opened our store in 2021, November 14th, and I am greeting you this morning on behalf of International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day to all. As an entrepreneur, I found that it was interesting to see that there's not a lot of women in reputable spaces. Therefore, there's not a lot of mentorship for us. Reveille Afrique is a groundbreaking luxury retail destination that offers unparalleled shopping experience. Our store is a celebration of Black excellence, showcasing the finest products from the best businesses across the African diaspora. We work with a lot of local entrepreneurs, and also we source entrepreneurs throughout the GTA, majority of them, 99% of them, which are women. We find that in the entrepreneurial space, especially with product making or delivery, majority of the people that we see are women in these sectors. I'm greeting you this morning and giving thanks to the City of Brampton. I also give thanks to Brampton Beck for being such a pivotal group in my business. They've helped me tremendously during the past, I say, 6 months of starting up RA. I had ran into difficulty being in a retail space during the COVID period. You would not expect, well, I guess I should have expected the challenges to come where retail was very low, so our sales margins were very low. So trying to make sales, pay out vendors, and also keep our store open was very challenging. I reached out to Daniel Bishan from the Brampton Entrepreneur Center to seek guidance on how I can continue and not give up. So far, he's been very encouraging. He's helped me to realign my business plan, which was one key thing that he helped me to do, reassess my business, and he continues to give ongoing support. I also thank the City of Brampton for incorporating the My Main Street program, which has given me 2 grants towards my company. One was for merchandising, and the other one was for to build my online space. I've worked with Ruby Gill, who has been helpful with my online presence. She's been constantly working with me, and I find that the system that's in place through the City of Brampton and through Brampton Beck has been helpful, because we as entrepreneurs are now getting one-on-one training, which I've been looking for mentorship through my own community for a long time, and it hasn't been available. I would like the city to acknowledge this Brampton Beck more and to give them more support, and how they can work more with local entrepreneurs. Also, how they can work more with entrepreneurs that are a part of the BIPOC community, as myself, and identifying the challenges that we have, which is mainly financial. Our backgrounds are not really, I wouldn't say our background, majority of us, our background in understanding business plan, understanding finances have not been the knowledge has not been given. The knowledge is still not there in our community, which needs to be increased. We need to, I find a lot of the entrepreneurs that are in my store, they can't even afford the shelf space that's just $150. That is also something I'd like the city of Brampton to look towards in trying to subsidize or trying to support the entrepreneurs to be able to pay for shelf space in those retail spaces as my own store. I am very grateful for the opportunity to come and speak here today, and I wish to see some of you guys visiting our store. We do carry menswear, women's wear, body products, and they're all handmade, local, vegan. A lot of them are vegan. A lot of them are natural products. So I do thank you very much. Happy Women's Day again, and have a blessed week. Thank you.
Well done, Julianne. Thank you for your delegation. And I will visit the store at the city center. Thank you very much. I see no further questions from council. A motion from Councillor Brar to receive the delegation. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. Thank you so much for sharing today.
You have a blessed day. Take care.
The next item is the one that I had missed earlier. Apologies again. 6.4, a delegation from Stephen Sayers, Brampton resident, regarding 11.3.1 noise walls in the vicinity of Howden Boulevard and Vaughan Street East, Ward 7. And this also relates to discussion item 11.3.1 on today's agenda, brought forward by Councillor Power. Welcome, Stephen. You have 5 minutes for your delegation. Please go ahead.
Yes. First of all, any plans I had for a presentation to you is put in the wayside. I had eye surgery on Monday, so I'm going to have to go through memory of my recollection of this whole incident and hopefully tie it into a nice little bow for you so you'll understand the issue. 35 years ago, our neighborhood was built, and the city of Brampton, this council, entered into an agreement with the builder to allow sound walls on my property. This was the result of a Province of Ontario environmental assessment, and prior to the severing of land, the city of Brampton was required to enter into these agreements with the builders to satisfy their demands at the province. Here we are 35 years later, and those walls are falling down. There are 64 kilometers of these walls in Brampton that were from the 1980s, that time period. Universally, throughout the region, that decision by council 35 years ago to allow those walls to be built with wood has generally been regarded as a poor decision and has been documented as such by both the Region Appeal, the City of Mississauga, and the City of Brampton. In 2011, the City of Mississauga changed their way of dealing with these laws and decided that as these walls needed to be replaced, they were going to move them from private property to city property, concrete, at no cost to the homeowner. The Region Appeal, shortly thereafter, also made the same determination that they were going to move any of these walls on regional roads as they came due for repair onto regional property at no cost to the homeowners. In 2015, your senior staff at Infrastructure gave a report to council that they too should also follow suit to make it the same across the region, and that they also felt that the decision made 35 years ago was a poor decision. That is documented in your minutes. An implementation report was asked for in 2015. After that delegation of staff was heard, this council agreed in principle to move forward with that recommendation. They were sent for an implementation report, and in 2017, staff came back with an implementation report. There were basically no material changes to that implementation report, other than inflation as to what the cost would be. For whatever reason, council completely turned and said no to their own previous recommendation of acceptance, and the issue was dead in the water. Enter our neighborhood. Our fences were falling down. I had become involved with my local councillor to find out what could be done. It was suggested we go through the local initiatives program, whereas because of what had happened with these fences, the city was prepared to pay 75% of the concrete walls going onto their property, and we would pay 25%. The neighbors and I that were in agreement thought this was a fantastic deal. The cost that it was going to cost me to put a concrete wall with the city's help was going to be less than it would cost me to actually rebuild my fence with this premium material. Unfortunately, the local initiative failed. And as I found out, the local initiative program was also generally regarded by staff as a total failure to deal with this matter. That is also documented in staff's report, the failings of their own local initiative for this fencing. For 6 years, I've been trying to rectify this problem in my neighborhood. So much so that 2 years ago, after our failed local initiative program, the city approached me and said, could we do this again? Could you please tell us that you would like to go through this process again so we can? We did, and the process failed again. Worse this time, less neighbors. You need community involvement to get these neighbors to understand the issues. When I went the first time, we were so close. After that, the city sent property standards to our neighborhood, and they hand tested every single one of these fences and hand delivered to our properties orders, basically, from property standards that these fences were unsafe, that these fences were being braced illegally, encroaching on city property, and that fences were being constructed illegally with the improper material that is dictated by the province of Ontario and previous councils. I'd like to let you know that in the year that this has happened, our neighborhood, as once again with every other neighborhood in Brampton, completely thumbed their noses at the enforcement that the city of Brampton is required to do. There is more bracing on your property. There are more fences that have been constructed with city knowledge illegally, and there are still fences, and I must say mine is one of them, that is at great risk to be blown over in our ever more frequent windstorms, that is being held up and tethered by a tree in my backyard. I cannot build...
Stephen, we have to, if you could just wrap up, please.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I cannot build my fence without the city's help. We are here today asking you to reconsider your decision to not help all of these communities in Brampton to rectify this problem. You are already agreeable to pay $722,000 to put that fence on there, along with the neighbors paying $175,000. That's gone. It's been voted down twice. We are now asking you just to throw in that other $172,000 and do the right thing, and let's get this city back on track with responsible fencing.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for your delegation. There are a number of questions from members of council, and at this time, I'll ask the clerk if we could also bring up that discussion item as well, if that's okay. So Councillor Power, Mayor Brown, then Councillor Fortini. Councillor Power, go ahead.
Thank you, and through the chair, thank you, Stephen, for your delegation. I'll send a motion to receive the delegation and put it forth to staff. I think there's a number of issues in this where we're going back and forth with a number of different things, and then I think we'll have to look at staff and what are the city legal requirements around this. I know there was an amendment that was made years ago that the city was responsible with. So if we can just refer it back to staff, and how long would it take for staff to come back with a report?
Thank you. So maybe just back to Councillor Power, maybe some clarification on what we would want from that report back.
Where we stand with it, actually. So what is the requirement from the city in regards to this? I know in some neighborhoods, they've done a 75-25 split with the residents, and just bring the report back.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Power. So I have Mayor Brown, who may have some clarification on what to expect for a report back from staff. So anything further? Councillor Power, thank you. Mayor Brown, go ahead.
Stephen, thank you for delegating, and I want to thank Councillor Power for making me aware of this issue and the history behind it. I had a chance to go with Councillor Power to sit down with the residents for coffee. Thank you for the coffee and for showing me the dilapidated fencing we have there. I had no idea until Councillor Power mentioned it, but there was that Ministry of the Environment agreement and the provincial role here years ago. And so in that history, I didn't have a line of sight into, and I would love to get some more information on it. I'd love to see what agreements existed, and maybe that could be included. So whatever agreements were signed by the city at the time of the erection of that fence, we could get that back to us maybe in a month with some recommendations of how we can deal with this, because we don't want to have a hazard there. And when you go and see it yourself, you can see why the residents are frustrated by this. So I'd love to look at how we can help. Councillor Power has me convinced we should do something. I just don't know, what is our responsibility and what would be the residents' responsibility in terms of the share of the cost based on the historic agreements that were signed. And so I believe Councillor Power mentioned this was brought up once before, and so if you look back at city debates, I'm sure we have those documents. But if we could get this back in a month with a staff recommendation on what the options are for council to help rectify this, so it's not an ongoing blight in the city. Would that be a fair summary, Councillor Power? Okay.
To the CAO.
Through the chair to Councillor Powers and the mayor, we can have a report back within a month that will be detailed and provide options for council to consider.
Thank you so much. I have Councillor Fortini next as well.
Madam Chair, thank you, Steve. It's been a long ride. I just missed Mayor Brown and Councillor Power that day. I was there before, and we've talked many times. To staff, I see it's 75 for us and 25 for the residents. Is that still stand the same?
Through the chair, yes.
It's still the same?
That's still the same.
So Steve, I know you want us to pay the full amount, and I think if we do, if we could find it, yes, because it's, we got to keep it fair for other residents too, because once we do the full amount there, we're going to have to do everywhere. But we were talking about walls all across the city going back a couple of years ago, and we had a report come, and I think that Howland there, that area was part of that report. That was part of that $6 million, replacement.
So through the chair, we'll go back and get the 2015 and 2017 and put that into the new report back to council for background information, and then come back to council with that report with recommendations moving forward.
Okay, yeah, and I know, Steve, we had that town hall meetings at Terry Mill and stuff, and I know you worked hard on it, but the residents don't come through, and I get it. But anyway, we'll see what the report says. I know those fences are in bad shape. They're holding on, and some of them are tied with ropes on a tree. We did the walk around there. So we'll see in a month what happens, and maybe we can bring that report forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. 1 second, Stephen. Mayor Brown, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I appreciate what Councillor Fortini is saying. We don't want to set a precedent, but I think we have to know what the historical context here of what agreements have been previously signed that may be different. I know there's a standard formula, but when Councillor Power points out that there's documents 40 years ago or 30, how many years ago was it?
To be 35 for our
35 years ago, yeah, that were signed. I want to know what those agreements are, how that may change what the legal obligation of the city is. So That's why I'm happy to support this, Councillor Power. I'm glad you brought it forward.
Thank you so much. And last word, Councillor Fortini.
Madam Chair, yeah, and I think did you bring these documents? I remember we went through it once, right, Steve? And we were trying to in favor of it, so maybe we can leave it
have the
legal.
documents right here,
Yeah.
actually. Here's the 2015, here's the 2017, if
Yeah,
anybody
good.
would like the copy.
Yeah, they'll give maybe to our legal, to our staff there. I know
And, I'll see if I
looked at
have-
our legal documents last time, so we could look at them again. Anyway,
And
thank you.
there's the signed amendment that everyone had to sign to purchase the homes.
Yeah, yeah, and that's great. That's what we need. So thank you. And we'll
Thank
see
you,
how we
Councillor
can support it.
Fortini. And just to note on the record that correspondence has been given directly to the clerk for our
And this,
information.
through you, Chair Santos, is included with the delegation. There were
Yes.
materials submitted that are attached to the delegation with the posted agenda.
Thank you. So that is in the delegation package already. I next have Councillor Paleshi. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess this is, what we kind of harp on sometimes, and over the years, it's been 35 years that you've been dealing with an issue like this, and you're coming here today to basically say, help me through this, do something, make a decision. And we as a council need to make that decision. So I'm sorry that you've been kind of dragged through, over the past number of years and no decision's been made. But I think what I'm hearing today is, especially from our CAO, that report will be back in a month. You have a great councillor and Councillor Power that's brought this forward and pushing this for you, and I'm sure whatever, the work that he puts into it and brings back to council can get behind. So
Thank
I
you for your
apologize,
understanding.
and thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paleshi, and we have a motion from Councillor Power. Thank you very much for bringing this item forward to receive the delegation. Any further discussion on this topic? We do have referral to staff for a report back. It's sounding like within the next month or so. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, Councillor Power, for bringing that forward. I believe that's all for delegations. We've covered everything, Mr. Clerk. Wonderful. And next item is government relations. We have Andres Hoffman, CAO's office, here with a presentation for Committee on Government Relations Matters. Andres, welcome. You have time for your presentation. I won't say 5 minutes, but hopefully it'll be 5.
I'll do my best. Thank you and good morning. Through the chair, I'll start today's presentation with an overview of the regional agenda. There are several items we'd like to bring to your attention. Next slide, please. We can move to the next slide. First is item 8.1, which is Canada-wide Early Learning Childcare Update and Expansion Plan, which provides an overview of the Canada-wide Early Learning and Canada Child Care Access and Inclusion Framework. As the Service System Manager for Early Years and Childcare, the Region of Peel has been allocated 7,621 new childcare spaces to be realized by 2026. The report also speaks to factors that were taken into consideration when identifying 13 priority areas for those additional childcare spaces. These include Brampton Bramalea, Brampton Northwest, Brampton Southwest, and Brampton Southeast. The Gore Meadows Early On Center is the only partnership for childcare delivery between the city and the Region of Peel, and on Monday, April the 17th, the region will be hosting a grand opening event for this location. The event will celebrate opening of all recent Early On locations that have opened during the pandemic. Next slide, please. Next, we have item 15.1, the Black North Initiative Homeownership Bridge Program. The report recommends more flexibility and more flexible approach to determining per household grant amounts due to current economic realities. Since the 2021 Regional Council meeting, when a one-time grant of $2.5 million has been approved to provide 50 eligible rentals in Peel with a grant of up to $50,000, there have been significant increases in purchase prices as well as interest rate hikes for borrowing costs. As a result, the regional staff requests flexibility to provide grants of $50,000 to $120,000 per eligible Peel household to assist approximately 20 to 50 Peel households under the program. The funds would be provided from the already approved grant of $2.5 million. Next slide, please. Next, we have item 17.1, infrastructure planning and requests of the province to support Bill 23 housing targets, which answers a request from a February 23rd Regional Council meeting for the regional staff to meet with local municipal staff and develop a list of provincial commitments required to support local housing pledges. The report provides an overview of previous regional staff presentation and a discussion regarding infrastructure planning to support new provincial housing targets. City staff have met with regional staff, and it was determined that due to lack of detail, the 20 billion infrastructure needs figure is a high-level estimate, and there will be difficulty in breaking that down into individual municipality level. Appendix 3 of the report also includes a list of provincial commitments required to support local housing pledges. That list does include all of the Brampton major asks submitted to the province as part of Brampton's housing pledge. I would only mention that a detailed briefing note was circulated to members of council yesterday. Also back in January, members of council had an opportunity to meet with Brampton MPPs to reiterate Brampton's position on Bill 23, as well as demonstrate willingness to work with the province and the region on meeting housing needs of Bramptonians. Next slide, please. The last regional agenda item we wanted to bring to your attention is item 20.1, a motion by Regional Councillor Vicente regarding homelessness. The motion is part of AMO's campaign encouraging municipalities to pass a resolution ahead of provincial budget, calling on province to take urgent action and work to end homelessness. The motion also builds on ongoing advocacy on this issue by the Ontario Big City Mayors. Next slide, please. Moving on to provincial updates, we wanted to flag for you Infrastructure Ontario's March 2023 market update, which includes a list of 38 major infrastructure projects across the province, totaling approximately $35 billion. The update includes transformation of a Peel Memorial Centre for Integrated Health and Wellness into Brampton's second full-service hospital. The project is currently in a detailed planning stage of the Ministry of Health's required capital planning process, with preliminary site work underway. This spring and summer, Osler will be in the community gathering insight and providing project updates. Further details will be provided in the coming months. We also wanted to flag for you the fact that last week, Minister of the Environment was in Brampton to announce $74,000 grant to the City of Brampton through the Species at Risk Stewardship Program for habitat restoration for snapping turtles at Lovers Lake. City staff continue to explore all opportunities to leverage grant funding for eligible city programs and projects. Next slide, please. Last week, we provided you with some details regarding registration for the 2023 FCM conference, which this year takes place in Toronto. Today, we're providing an outline of the proposed advocacy priorities for the conference. Over the next several weeks, we will be working with department staff as well as strategic communications to develop detailed advocacy package to support Brampton's advocacy on key priorities such as infrastructure funding, transit and active transportation, economic growth and innovation, as well as climate action. Our materials will build on Brampton's 2023 pre-budget submission and highlight potential areas of collaboration. We have not identified any federal updates for this week, and this concludes this presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Andres. Councillor Vicente with questions and comment.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Andre, for the updates and also for bringing up the Black North Initiative, which hopefully is something that we can advance tomorrow. I personally support the recommendations in that report, and hopefully we can have support from council as well. We have a motion that I tabled at the region, and thank you for bringing that up as well. I would ask that the city clerk display the motion that I shared with all of you earlier this week. And I want to just thank the Association of Municipalities of Ontario for helping us to table that motion here today. Thanks to Chris, who isn't here today, but both you and Chris were instrumental in making sure that we tailored the motion appropriately. Asking for your support for this motion in advance of the provincial budget, which we're expecting on March 23rd this month. And I will save the reading of the whereas statements and just instead add a few of my comments. In the past, in these chambers, I've spoken about my wish to see more homes, more affordable homes, built here in the city of Brampton. I've talked about how when you search the MLS system and you adjust your affordability parameters, you often are left with very few or perhaps even no dots for homes that you might be able to afford to either rent or own. And we know from that we have a serious problem here in Brampton. Long before the pandemic, and we already had this situation, and the pandemic has only exacerbated the problem. Vulnerable people and families are even greater risk of experiencing homelessness because they can't afford to live where they're living today, and if they're looking for something that's more affordable, they simply can't find it. Now, we're doing what we can at the Region of Peel. We have a wait list that is unacceptably long and continues to grow. Use of our shelters in the Region of Peel has grown substantially, in particular in the past 2 years. We're doing everything that we can. We need to do more, and we are already doing so much. But as we well know, we simply don't have the resources, the money, to meet the need that we are seeing here in Brampton. So, members of committee, all municipalities are being asked to support a province-wide call to our government in Queen's Park, to work with us, to work with AMO, and to work with all of our service providers on an emergency basis to help plan and fund housing solutions and ultimately help solve the homelessness problem. We need a province-wide solution and effort, and that is what we are asking here in this motion. So in just moving to the resolution, therefore be it resolved that the City of Brampton calls on the province to urgently acknowledge that homelessness in Ontario is a social, economic, and health crisis, commit to ending homelessness in Ontario, increase the supply of housing affordable for low and middle income households, and work with AMO and a broad range of community, health, Indigenous, and economic partners to develop, resource, and implement an action plan to achieve this goal. And further, that a copy of this motion be sent to the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services, the Minister of Health, Peel members of Provincial Parliament, and to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. And so that is the motion there, and I'd also just let staff know that AMO has put up some resources that we as a City of Brampton can use, including a press release, a sample press release, and sample social media tiles that we could post on our social media channels to let everyone know that the City of Brampton is asking the province to act now. And with that, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vicente. Councillor Vigeros on the motion.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair, I specifically to the motion I will be speaking, also had questions regarding just in general on the presentation, but thank you, Councillor Vicente, for bringing this forward. I do, a couple of thoughts come to mind. One is that I guess in our response to Bill 23, there are statements of such that we hope Bill 23 addresses also the homelessness issue.
Yeah, through the chair, through to Councillor Medeiros, that's right. Our housing pledge does have a section on Brampton's work towards not only the homelessness, but the missing middle, all of our sort of affordability strategies for housing.
Excellent. And through you, Madam Chair, and Councillor Vicente, at the region, because one thing I find, and it's important, I understand this is a more broad AMO perspective, but I think when we communicate, I think this is a good sort of launch for us to at the regional level, and I'm not sure, but I assume that there's more finite numbers, there's more targeted numbers, because when we can articulate exactly, you know, what fund, like when we throw a ballpark and you just talk about, we would like more funds, but if we can articulate what that number would be, what that would translate into, how many people to serve. You know, and I'm not saying for this exercise, as this is an AMO, but I think what you do is you set the stage for us at the region for that advocacy to communicate further. And one thing that, you know, has come in mind, and that would be sort of my question going to staff, we hear the provincial government is sitting on surplus. And it's insane, you know, as of a couple of weeks ago, there's a lot of media attention to it with the needs that we need from healthcare, i.e., you know, our Peel Memorial transformation, the healthcare needs we have in our community, the growth that we're dealing with, and the provincial government sitting on a surplus. You know, you would think these type of asks, the type of advocacy, you know, that there would be an opportunity for them to, unless they're waiting just before the election to do all the announceables. But, you know, I think it comes opportune. I would like to see this after as sort of, we use this as a basis to maybe direct regional staff to provide that exact, you know, numbers in terms of, you know, how much investment would translate and how much, because I think they're doing that work presently and they have some of that. So I think this is very opportune. Thank you, Councillor Vicente, and it'd be great other municipalities to bring that. But I think the region, we can really show more in being sort of definite in terms of what the ask would be regarding those numbers. And that's something that we can discuss at the region. But this really sets the stage, and I think we need to build momentum for that advocacy regarding this, because it is becoming increasingly a harder issue. And when I started in 2015, we got Brampton's first youth shelter to help with youth homelessness, which continues to be an issue. I know that, for example, Councillor Fortini, he was very passionate about homelessness, especially with, I believe it was mothers or females, families who are dealing with crisis. And we were trying to build a women's shelter and address that. So I think this really provides a good basis for us to be a little bit more sort of precise in the ask going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Medeiros. We have a motion moved by Councillor Vicente on the floor. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion carries. And a motion to receive the presentation moved by Councillor Medeiros. Anyone opposed? That carries. Thank you, Andres. Thank you, Councillor Vicente, for that. Our next item on the agenda is legislative services, and there are no items, so I'm going to go straight to public question period. Mr. Clerk, are there any questions related to legislative services from the public?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Chair Santos, I'll ask if there anybody in the gallery to come forward. There appears not to be, and online there are no questions.
Thank you. And any questions from members of council regarding legislative services? I see none. Next item is economic development, and there was an item held by Deputy Mayor Singh. Is Deputy Mayor Singh here or online, perhaps? Okay, we're just waiting to get Deputy Mayor Singh on this item. And in the meantime, another reminder that International Women's Day events begin at 2 o'clock today and then 6 o'clock this evening. Deputy Mayor Singh, we have your item held regarding Medical Technology MedTech Advisory Committee. You have the floor.
Thank you, and I'm good with the report. I just had to add a few companies that were added a little bit after. Could we just change the name to MedTech Committee, not even medical, just MedTech, because it's MedTech Canada, and I want to just change it to the MedTech Task Force. Otherwise, people are excited and looking forward to working through this committee. Just MedTech Task Force.
So through you, Chair Santos, then the motion moved by Deputy Mayor Singh is to receive the report to change the name of the committee to a task force, to update the composition to the groups and representatives noted.
Yeah.
And the fourth is that the deputy mayor be appointed as chair, and the representative from TMU be appointed as vice chair.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. Motion moved by Councillor Deputy Mayor Singh. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. Thank you. Councillor Singh for that. The next item in economic development, I believe, Mr. Clerk, is councillor question period. Do any members have any questions regarding economic development? I see none. Public question period, Mr. Clerk, any questions on public? Nothing. Thank you very much. So we're now moving speedily through. Now at item number 10, corporate services section, and Councillor Singh, you have the floor to chair. Would you like to switch spots at the moment? Oh, Councillor Brar is chairing. Perfect.
Thank you. We'll be starting the corporate service section. Our next item is 10.2.1, a staff report titled Corporate Event Listing 2023 to 2026. Councillor Santos, I believe you held that. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. Through you, Madam Chair. I just held it because over the past few months, the community from the Latino community has reached out and talking about Latino Heritage Month, which became its own month, I believe, last year, and we had an inaugural event hosted by the community themselves. And I know that they are wanting to have Latino Heritage Month part of the corporate listing of events as well, to be supported and celebrated in the same way as Portuguese Heritage Month and Italian Heritage Month and Irish Heritage Month, etc. So I just want to make an amendment to include Latino Heritage Month for the month of October. And I did see that that the calendar doesn't have any events for the month of October at this point in time.
Councillor, through the chair, we can add it. For the Heritage Months, there's generally a $5,000 budget for those, so we'd add that and then add it to budget tomorrow as well.
Okay, and Councillor Pelletier, you're going to help. Okay, perfect. Councillor Pelletier is going to add a motion as well, in addition to adding Latino Heritage Month. Thank you. That's my addition.
Thank you. Mayor Brown, you have the floor.
Yes, I wanted to add the event that we already passed earlier this year in December, which was Hockey Night in Brampton, August 23rd. We're going to support the hospital in a big way like we did 3 years ago, where we raised nearly $500,000. And there's a number of soft costs that we help with, designing websites, and we've already designated the day at the CA Center. I believe there's a motion that was prepared.
Through you, Chair Brar, yes, we will have a motion. It's right there on the screen, and the amendment is in red. So it's amending recommendation 2 of the staff report for the inclusion on an annual basis for the Hockey Night in Brampton with the operating budget of $50,000 with the source of funding to be determined by the treasurer.
And just to note, for the backyard rink contest last year, we set up a budget for them to work with, but our sponsorship actually exceeded what was spent, and so this is just to get the event started. I believe Councillor Pelletier will have a motion to deal with this at budget as well, but just so we have this included.
Thank you. Councillor Pelletier, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And so, in going through the report and having the discussion with staff, there's so many fantastic events at the City of Brampton that our staff undertake and work so hard to make the best possible. And and as much as I love adding more events, and I do, because that's all about engaging with our residents and in talking to residents, like they absolutely love it every time they're down at these events and taking part and feeling, really, that Brampton proud of being a part of something. But trying to make them just that much a little bit better, and including these other ones, it costs money, and and just having those discussions with staff to see what we can do in some of these additions and making some events just a little bit better, and adding the Diwali fireworks and throughout the city. I have a motion that I'd like to, I guess, essentially refer to budget tomorrow. And if we can have that on the screen, and it will be in addition to the 50,000. I'm sure we can take the 5,000 from the 200,000 from the motion. So hopefully that helps with Councillor Santos's Latino Heritage Month. So if we can maybe potentially, if we can delete that last $5,000, add the 50 to the 250 that the mayor's requesting, and refer that to budget tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do we have any other speakers on this item?
Through you, Chair Brar, just to clarify, so we have the motion moved by Councillor Santos, the amendment to the staff recommendations for Latino Heritage Month. And as I believe Councillor Paleshi then is moving an amendment to remove the 5,000 operating budget addition under the assumption that it'll be assumed within a budget somewhere. There's the mayor's motion on adding Hockey Night in Canada with the additional operating budget of $50,000. And then there's Councillor Paleshi's motion for the addition of the $200,000. And just for clarity, so it'll be $250,000 net being added. Councillor Paleshi, are you just referring your motion to council special meeting tomorrow on the budget, or are you referring all of these motions?
Well, it all has to go to budget tomorrow, because I was thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, I was thinking, since we're ratifying budget tomorrow, if it doesn't get referred to budget tomorrow for approval, then it would be council next week, and then therefore it'd be a budget amendment. So rather it not be a budget amendment, just refer all of this to budget tomorrow so that we can get it done.
Through you, Chair Brar, that makes sense, but I would defer to both Strategic Communications, and I see Rick Kennard and possibly Nasher on the line just to comment. I don't want to speak for finance in terms of the implications for the budget.
Through you, Chair Brar. Thanks, Peter. I think it is appropriate. I mean, we can add the amendments to the corporate events listing to allow the report to go through, subject to, I would say, subject to approval of the budget. And if we bring the funding forward to tomorrow's council meeting on the budget and it gets approved, then we'll have the appropriate funding in place.
We support the report today, and then the budget request to budget tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, is there anyone else on?
So it's just for clarification, we will still amend the calendar to include Latino Heritage Month and the Brampton Hockey Night in Brampton, and deal with the budget tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion moved by Councillor Santos to approve the staff report. All in favor? As amended. All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. Our next item is 10.3.1, a discussion item at the request of Councillor Santos regarding gender-based analyst plus GBP plus to support the development of responsiveness, inclusiveness policies, programs, and other initiatives. Councillor Santos, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to my colleagues, it's International Women's Day. I know we keep saying it over and over again, and perhaps some folks are getting tired of hearing it, but I'll keep going and saying it anyway. As an advocate and a feminist that is pushing ongoingly for gender equality, equity, and parity. And this motion is actually based on a meeting that we had. When I say we, I mean Councillor Brar and myself had with MP Sidhu, who shared with us that the federal government, way back when, implemented gender-based analysis in their various policies and programs, etc. And it started off with training with staff. And so really what this motion is about making sure that as per what we passed in December the 14th, to empower women at the City of Brampton. It takes it even further into tangible action steps from that overarching motion to include implementing gender-based analysis, plus training for all senior levels of staff, including City Council, by International Women's Day next year. And then secondly, we have so many different different citizen advisory committees. And because women represent more than 50% of the population across the country and in the city of Brampton, we should be having our own women's advisory committee to council, similar to the cycling advisory committee, similar to the sports committee, similar to other citizen advisory committees, because we are trying to do more, not just internally, but also externally, and get those voices heard in order to improve our policies at the City of Brampton. And finally, the third item on this is a tangible action for us as a council and as leaders in the city, is to officially establish and support the Women's Employee Resource Group internally within the city, and that will be led by our Equity Office. I see Michelle Byrne here today, with support from Human Resources. So on this day of International Women's Day 2023, we are embracing equity in these three items in taking tangible steps towards more gender parity, equality, and equity in the city of Brampton. I am going to read the whereases, and I am going to read all of the therefore be it resolved. So the motion is embracing equity at the city of Brampton, moved by myself and Councillor Brar. Whereas women represent over 50% of the population across the country and locally in Brampton, yet women hold 35.6% of management positions and 30% or 30.9% of senior positions, according to Stats Canada. Whereas gender equality is enshrined in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, specifically sections 15 and 28, which is part of the Constitution of Canada, along with federal legislation of Canadian Labour Code Part 2, Gender Budgeting Act, and the Employment Equity Act. Whereas gender equality means that diverse groups of women, men, and gender diverse people are able to participate fully in all spheres of Canadian life, contributing to an inclusive and democratic society. Whereas gender-based analysis plus is an analytical process that provides rigorous methods for assessment of systemic inequalities, as well as a means to assess how diverse of groups of women, men, and gender diverse people may experience policies, programs, and initiatives. And we caught that, I think last week or the week before, when Councillor Pelletier brought up parking for expectant mothers. That is a tangible example of what gender-based analysis would have caught ahead of time. I'm going to skip some of these statistics here and just say that the City of Edmonton passed a motion back in 2017 to implement gender-based analysis plus and training within their municipality. So did Halifax in July of 2021. The City of Edmonton also established a Women's Advocacy Voice of Edmonton Committee, so that's another women's committee that is formed by another municipality, and so did the City of Halifax in 2019. And as we celebrate as a city on March 8th, International Women's Day, I know that my colleagues and the City of Brampton is committed to embracing equity every single day in a very tangible way. And so we have in place a motion since 2019, or policy since 2019 at the City of Brampton on gender identity and expression protocol. And we are, as a city, committed to going beyond commemoration of all these significant days and be intentional in our efforts to provide support and empowerment opportunities for women and gender parity within the city and on this council. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Brampton implement mandatory gender-based analysis plus e-learning training for senior leaders in the administration and for the City Council by March 8th, 2024, and that this training utilize the federal government's e-learning tool. Number 2, develop terms of reference for a Women's Advisory Committee with an inaugural committee established no later than March 8th, 2024. And number 3, officially establish and support a Women's Employee Resource Group through the Equity Office with support from Human Resources. And I want to give special acknowledgement to my friend and esteemed colleague, Councillor Brar, for being on this table with me as we persevere for more gender parity at the city and here across the city and the country as well, and our allies too. That's the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. I couldn't have said that better myself. We have Mayor Brown on.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Brar. Great motion, fully supported. I want to thank Councillor Brar and Councillor Santos for being such champions, and how appropriate is it on International Women's Day to be presenting this motion. Councillor Santos gave a great speech at the Brampton Board of Trade's annual International Women's Day event at Lionhead, and you shared the story of Councillor Paleshi and Keenan talking about what it meant to be pregnant and how we need a gender-based analysis in the city. And the example that was illustrated by Councillor Paleshi was rec centers. And you know, you had everyone laughing at that event, that your male colleagues would know what it's like to waddle. But you said you felt very, it was a good feeling to know you had allies around the table. And so I imagine you'd find everyone in council willing to second this, because you are at a table of allies. Hopefully we can be an example municipality in how we look at that gender-based analysis, and city building needs to include it. And there's no better example than the one shared a few weeks ago from Councillor Paleshi. So thank you for putting this motion forward. Thank you, Councillor Brar and Councillor Santos, for being exceptional examples and leaders in our community. And this is a great step forward.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. And can we have a recorded vote? Oh,
It's your name.
Councillor Santos?
Thank you so much, Mayor Brown, and thank you, Councillor Paleshi, for calling the recorded vote. I just wanted to, before we do our recorded vote, give a big, huge, heartwarming thank you to all of the women across the city of Brampton who work at our city every single day, who inspire this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. Can we have a recorded vote? I have a motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Santos and I. All in favor?
All in favor, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor is Mayor Brown, Councillor Vasante, Councillor Santos, Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Keenan, Chair Brar, Councillor Medeiros, Councillor Power, Councillor Fortini, Deputy Mayor Singh. Councillor Tour is still absent. The motion carries unanimously, 10-0.
Our next item is 10.5, Councillor question period for this section. Do any members have any questions, concerns?
Through you, Chair Brar, there was two added items to the agenda at the start of the meeting, 10.3.2 from Deputy Mayor Singh regarding workshops, and then 10.3.3 and associated 10.4.1 from the Mayor regarding the running series.
Okay. Our next item is 10.3.2, discussion item at the request of Deputy Mayor Singh, council workshop at the status of urban community hub design concept, Uptown Hub and Queens Hub, and ongoing city master plans and initiatives. Deputy Mayor Singh, you have the floor.
Yeah, this is just a continuation of the discussion last week when we were talking about the Arts Council and how we need to start bringing everything in-house. And I had mentioned we'll do a workshop, but this is just to formalize it and make a request on behalf of council. The motion was sent, and we could just show it, and I worked with staff and Councillor Santos to draft it. We have done a lot of work. It seems like it's in silos, so we want to bring it together and have council's input on it. Like I said, last week I had asked for it, but I thought a motion would be more appropriate to request it formally. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Singh. Do any members have any questions or comments? There's a motion on the floor. We have a motion moved by Councillor Deputy Mayor Singh. All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Our next item is 10.3.3, request of Mayor Brown. Can we see that on the motion on the screen?
Through you, Ms. Chair Brar, there is no motion yet on this one.
I'm happy to speak to it. Yes. Put the correspondence on the screen. Recently, a Brampton resident from wards, I believe 2 and 6, reached out and mentioned that the iconic Toronto Waterfront Marathon is part of a running series that produces millions for charity. It's one of the most iconic marathons in the country. serves as a qualifier for Boston and also Olympic trials, and they won a pre-run, and they thought of Brampton. And so sort of, we've always talked about wanting to attract a run, and this fell into our lap because a resident happens to work for the group that's doing this. I believe Councillor Pleshy knows the resident. I was elated when I heard the news. This is wonderful. And so I just want to have a motion asking our staff to work with them on identifying a date that's really quick turnaround, and just whatever soft costs we can waive if they need to use a rec center, if there's barricades, anything that we can, any soft costs that we can waive. Putting an event on the first year can be challenging, but then after that it becomes its own success. And these are major charity revenue generators. I think it said right here, $4.2 million for 240 local charities, and they try to support the communities they're in. It is very prestigious to be part of the Canadian Running Series. For any runners on council, you'll know that this is a coup. They also mentioned that it's now the Toronto Waterfront Marathon, their title sponsor is now Tata, which is an interesting connection because Tata is one of the largest companies in India, and they actually, so I think there'd be a large segment of our population that would have a lot of history with that company that is, bigger than Bell and Rogers combined in terms of their presence in India. I know I've had a chance to meet them when I've gone to India, and I think this is interesting that Tata is showing an interest in our city, but also in sponsoring this event.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Do any members have any questions or comments?
But I think Peter, I probably need some help on the wording, just to work immediately with the organizers to set a date, a route, and waive whatever soft costs available. And if you need, would there be any additional, would it need to come back to council, or can we just do it in that aspect?
Through you, Chair Brar, my advice would be there needs to be a report back, because if there needs to be a date identified that doesn't conflict with other city events and whatever the cost implications are, so council may know what soft costs or other costs they may be waiving.
So I'm going to ask if you could report back for the next council meeting after, like, whatever it is in 3 weeks, because I know they need to start advertising this as soon as possible.
Through you, Chair Brar, the next council meeting would be April 5th, if the report could come back at that time.
Yeah, I just hope that that's not too late for them, because they need to get this into their promotions. Don't we ratify?
Through you, Chair Brar, so today's recommendations will be ratified at the special council meeting tomorrow.
So what I'd say, in the motion, because maybe they already know the date they have in mind, if I could just say that you report back either at the special council meeting or the one after that. If we can't do tomorrow, then that's fine, but otherwise we do the April 5th. But I believe they may have, they've been dealing with Gage Board, and I believe they may have a date already in mind.
Through the chair, Gage is here today, and we're happy to connect with the group to find out if they have a date in mind and to work as quickly as we can to come back to you with more details.
So Peter, logistically, we just place that as a placeholder on the special council meeting in case it's something that's really simple and they can start advertising it?
Through you, Chair Brar, yes, because these minutes or recommendations are going to council tomorrow, if there is some supplementary information in the form of a report or whatever that's available tomorrow, that can be presented at tomorrow night's meeting.
So Gage, no pressure, but this would be awesome, and they want to encourage members of council to participate too. So I see Councillor Powers nodding his head, he's ready to run. Councillor Brar, okay, great.
Hi there, if I may, through the chair, just to speak to that item, we have been working with another local organization about a half marathon in the fall. We're really happy to see that there's interest from the Toronto Running Series as well. We'll work with them today for an information report back as early as tomorrow. We'll have to look at dates, as the clerk noted, that if it's any conflicts with corporate events, but we won't be able to dedicate a day as early as tomorrow just because of what we need to go through traffic control plans, safety, closing the roads, and making sure that it's safe for us to do so on those days. So a more fulsome plan will come forward, but we'll get the information forward to tomorrow and seeing what they're looking to do, what dates, and see if that can be passed.
Yeah, I guess my only question is, does that need to come to council in terms of the route?
I think it might have to for road closures, depending on the impact to the community and the size of it. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as picking a date and a route. If it's on the road and it's impacting major roads, it may have
Yeah, I think it's just the date they need to confirm. So if there's something they need confirmed, if we could just, that aspect, in terms of those sort of micro details on route closures, then there's no rush to that, but just if we could help them verify the date as soon as possible.
Okay, through the chair, we'll get a date confirmed and brought back tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion moved by Mayor Brown that staff investigate the holding of Canada Running Series event in Brampton in the summer of 2023, and with consolidation with the organizers, report back to the special meeting, a special council meeting of March 9, 2023, date verification and/or the April 5th, 2023 meeting of council with details.
And just sort of, in the motion, it should include in the waiving of any soft costs. So they need to have a rec center as the meeting spot, or city hall as the meeting spot for all the runners come. Just the waiver of soft costs. Okay, perfect.
All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Our next item is 10.5, councillor question period for this section of this agenda. Any questions from council members?
And through you, Chair Brar, there are no public questions?
Seeing none, we'll move on. Now we'll go to public questions, so no public questions. Okay. I'll ask the clerk if there are any questions submitted during the course of this meeting online. Okay. I'll pass the chair to Councillor Vasanti to chair the Public Works and Engineering section of the committee agenda.
Thank you very much. Members of committee, our next item is 11.1.1, staff presentation regarding active transportation master plan implementation for 2022-2023 annual report, all wards. And we have a related staff report, 11.2.1, which we can consider after the presentation. Nelson? It's already dealt with. Do we need to move the report?
It's just the report that's left through you, Mr. Chair. I believe Councillor Paleshi said he had some questions on the report.
Very good. So we have a report moved by Councillor Santos. Oh, do we have questions? Councillor Paleshi, I didn't see your name there. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just trying to scroll down to the report. What I didn't see in this report was what's the status kind of on the Orangeville line, rail line, in terms of, you know, pulling out specifically the crossings, and where are we with the Orangeville rail line? Changing that over to multi-use.
So through the chair to Councillor Paleshi, we do have a working group looking at that right now as to what direction we need to go in with an EA and pulling out which ones we can pull out now and which ones we have to hold on to, any easements that we might have through legal. So once we have that, we'll propose a plan to come back to council for funding to start an EA and a plan as to what we're going to do with the lands.
Okay, Rob, I'm starting to get a lot of people complaining about, you know, we're all about the flow of traffic, and there's a lot of buses that still stop at the line because the X's are still there or whatever is still up. indicating the rail line. Are we 100% that rail line is no longer being used?
Through the chair, yes, we are.
Okay.
And it is under the city jurisdiction, so we can move forward on.
Can we go pull those signs and put something to indicate that it's no longer in use and it's no longer a rail crossing?
Absolutely, through
To
the
allow
chair.
not only our buses, but school buses to keep going with the flow. Sandalwood is an absolute nightmare when you have all the school buses plus our transit buses stopping at the rail line.
So through the chair to Councilor Pelletier, we will put that together right away.
Excellent. On the 2023 plan, it indicates here that, maybe it might have been the 2022 plan, Ward 2, bike lane, Conestoga from Ruth to Kennedy, or Sandalwood to something rather. Can you just put a hold off on that for right now, please? Because Etobicoke Creek's right beside that road, and I can't, like, there's other areas of Brampton that could use bike lanes, and that particular area, it's not, that road is not a direct road. It's, you know, it's one of the nice Heart Lake roads that kind of meanders through Heart Lake. So if you want to get somewhere, you don't use Conestoga. But if you want to get somewhere on a bike, you also don't use Conestoga. If you wanted to travel north-south, Etobicoke Creek is the best trail in the city of Brampton. So if we can hold off on those bike lanes. Additionally, Van Scott, I can't justify adding bike lanes to Van Scott as well. So if we can just hold off on that, kind of put a pin in there, because if we're trying to, you know, have cyclists travel north-south, you know, I see them on, you know, the McLaughlins, the Chincouzis, Kennedy Road. You know, Kennedy Road, we need to have a look at to see if we can get multi-use on that road. It is one of the straightest roads, underutilized. Lots of land either side of the road. You know, and I'm a firm believer of, you know, bike lanes, but I don't have my head around bike lanes being a part of the road network as of right now. I would much rather see them up on top of, you know, with a separation to keep cyclists safe. But that being said, we need to provide the same level of service in terms of snow clearing. So if we're going to have a multi-use trail beside a street, then, you know, that same level of service needs to be provided north-south. East-west, something a little bit different, because other than Mayfield, you know, Sandalwood's not a good example of having an east-west multi-use path. Or if you know, we're trying to say that if you're on a bike, you're getting somewhere A to B, and, you know, having, you know, straight line point A to B is the best thing, I think, for cyclists. But some of the roads, not so much. Mayfield certainly is one. You know, Williams Parkway certainly is one, and there are other good examples of roads that we can use for alternate transportation. So we can put a hold off of that. I would appreciate it. I can just, the staff direction, that's good,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, through the chair, we'll take a look at the program and then just defer those projects for now, and then report back to council in future budget years.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pelletier. Next, Councillor Santos.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. And so I've always been an advocate of active transportation and on-road active transportation for a number of reasons. I don't believe that we should be putting active transportation infrastructure specifically just on multi-use paths, etc. There is a culture shift that is happening with respect to using active transportation, not just for bikes, but also in terms of sharing space on the road in general and dealing with climate change and climate action, trying to get people out of their cars and healthy, and utilizing infrastructure to get from point A to B, including first and last mile with respect to transit. That being said, I'm just wondering if staff can share why Conestoga, and I guess is it the other road that was being suggested put on hold, why those are currently part of the network, and for cyclists or users like myself who do ride on roads across the city of Brampton, why those are key sort of network connectors within the ATMP.
Is there this one? Oh, it's already on. Through the chair, thank you for the questions, Councillor Santos. With respect to Van Scott, that was included in the 2022 project. So the bike lanes exist there today, but we will monitor those and see the impact on queuing and that sort of thing, the impacts on traffic operations. With respect to Conestoga and I guess the network, when we established the active transportation network, the strategy was to include any arterial roads as well as any collector road to feed those arterial roads, like the process we would follow in moving vehicles or transit. They're all elements within the network. And ultimately, the plan is, like I had suggested in my presentation, is our focus needs to change the way we think about mobility, and we can appreciate that right now we're not seeing a lot of people on bikes, but that is growing and that's changing. And what we're planning for is into the future, and the fact with what the province has planned for the city of Brampton, we won't be able to move around with just a single privately owned automobile. So they're all pieces of the network, but we appreciate, Councillor Palestrian, if it's an additional conversation, additional investigation that's required for those specific links, we can do that and perhaps meet and include, I guess, impacts of those links if, the bicycle lanes are removed from that link, if that helps.
Through the chair, just another point as we take a look at the impacts of those and better understand why that infrastructure may or may not be needed to support our active transportation goals. What I have noticed is, I order through Uber Eats a lot because I'm a busy person. But what I've noticed is that because of our infrastructure now in the city of Brampton, Uber Eats is utilizing cyclists to deliver food across the city of Brampton instead of cars, especially during rush hour traffic when cars are stuck in rush hour traffic. And in fact, sometimes it's faster to get Uber Eats and food delivered to the house through cycling than it is actually through traditional cars. And I've seen them around, similar in Toronto, with the big food packs on their back. And so this is creating a little bit, in addition to bike tourism in the summer, but I literally a few weeks ago ordered Uber Eats and somebody in the winter was using their bike and our active transportation infrastructure because I saw them. I was following them on the app in order to get food delivered to my house. And so just to keep that in mind, as well as the e-scooter pilot and micro-mobility options, they will be utilizing the active transportation infrastructure that we are investing in because those e-scooters are not allowed on multi-use paths given the speed that they go at, nor are they allowed on sidewalks. So they will either be on the road or they will be on active transportation infrastructure. So just a couple of points to mention there. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Santos. Next, Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I guess Councillor Santos raises, one of the questions that I always have, and it's a great system that, that we're trying to build, and it's all for the right reasons. But when we do have, for example, some issues with certain roads, respective councillors, be it on the ward and so on, and it just happens 3 and 4, in consultation with Councillor Keenan, we're not so bad with what's being proposed now. But by, for example, removing one road here, one major exit, does that compromise sort of the plan? Is there opportunity for us to sort of weigh in and say, you know, we like it here, but we don't like it here, we want it here? And the problem that I have, to be quite frank, is that because this is technical in nature, I don't know, by removing one road here, does it undermine the flow and the connectivity, all that stuff, because that has to be sort of the rationale. On the other end, you have resident feedback, and residents, for one reason or another, Charlet is always that sort of sore spot, an example of, you know, does it make sense, is it there? And I guess the other question is, we're monitoring sort of the usefulnesses, but I do understand the dilemma that this innately is having, because, you know, the end product is, I guess, what we're thriving for, all the great reasons, but to get there, there's some pain. And that's the difficulty part for us when we have residents call us, no way, put it here, this and that. But I guess if we start picking and choosing, we start undermining the system in its totality and the integrity of what the system's going to be. So I guess when we sort of have issues with roads, you know, in our case is, for example, Charlet, I guess you guys go away and do you look at, for example, we can live with having it in another road, or is that something that we can do? Or what we have here is sort of, listen, we need to follow this or we're not going to get to that end vision. Are you following me a little bit?
Yeah. Through the chair, it's an excellent point, and maybe if I could just, before I get into that question, just to touch on the comments that Councillor Santos made, because I think they're relevant to what the city is trying to achieve in totality about shifting people's perception of modality. And I think in particular, the Uber Eats example really highlights what we've learned in a post-pandemic world about movement of people and goods and sort of the gig economy. Why I mention this is because the team will be coming back, I'd say in the next month or two, with a bit of a presentation to council on the human behavioral aspects of transportation choice. It's clear from Nelson's report that both staff from Public Works and Planning can build the infrastructure, but then the usage of the infrastructure to realize the return on investment and then achieving the outcomes. So I just kind of wanted to mention that in light of Councillor Santos's comments. Through the chair, to your question, Councillor Medeiros, again, if we start to, I think of this as a quilt almost, and if we start to remove patches of the quilt one at a time without looking at things in totality, it could undermine what the outcomes that council wants to achieve by these investments. What I might suggest is, as we start to receive these requests from members of council, we could almost do a bit of a pilot to see if a deferral of a project, for instance, would increase any public safety matters in terms of accidents, or would it then start to shift, you know, cyclists to different routes, then causing conflicts on those routes. So there's always the option to pilot and report back to council as to why, you know, it's probably best to stick with the plan. That being said, if there's one thing I've learned over the years about planning, it's very much iterative process, right? So you have a plan now and things change, and it's our role to report back with evidence as to why council should consider any changes.
Yeah, and just lastly through Mr. Chair, I guess just the basics, how are we analyzing its effectiveness? So as we build this, right, do you guys actually go out, monitor what's the usage, monitor, you know, what's that process, just very succinctly?
So the Active Transportation Master Plan has a chapter solely dedicated to monitoring. So there is a plan that we're implementing. Yeah. As I suggested, we already have, you know, one counter. We have invested in other counters, technologies at intersections where cameras already exist. We're starting to gather that data, not only to measure, you know, the uptake of the cycling infrastructure, but to also those implications, whether it's, you know, travel speed through a corridor that used to be 4 lanes and narrowed down to 2 lanes. All of that stuff is going to be gathered and fed into this monitoring program.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Next, Councillor Frattini.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I'm kind of in favor of what Councillor Palashi is saying. You know, we got a lot of green space, and I've always said it. Where it has to go on the road, it has to go on the road, but to put it on the green space, we got lots of grass on the side. It accommodates and it keeps everyone happy. I know a lot of my area. You know, when we advertise for these bike lanes, you know, what really gets me is the postcards are like this. So I received 4 of them all at once, and they were in Princess Auto magazine. I guess the mailman, when he put them in, got stuck inside there. Glenvale, Hanover, Goldcrest, Central Parkway. All the same picture, the only thing that changes is the name of the road. And they were this big. You know, we all ran elections. If we sent a flyer like that, it's like a business card telling what's coming on your street. Nobody's gonna see it. Right. And the way I found it by accident, looking through my Princess Auto magazine, I guess they got stuck inside there and they fell out. So we gotta get the residents more engaged too. With a regular flyer, normal, showing the maps, showing everything. Not just a little thing, and I've said it many times. You know, especially where there's driveways, you know, people saying, okay, I got Mother's Day now coming, or, you know, Easter. Where are they gonna go park? Where are they gonna park? Queen Street? Especially in Glenville, you know, they look big driveways, but they're semis. So we can't park on the bike lanes, we can't park on the road. There's nowhere to park. And so we gotta look at these options too, where, you know, fits and doesn't fit. There's a lot of stuff, I agree with Councilor Lesher, on the boulevard, if we could put them there, it's still, the active transportation plan will still connect everything, but at least, you know, it doesn't separate. My thing is, how are we gonna clean the snow? How wide are these bike lanes gonna be? When we're putting the curbs?
Through the chair.
Maybe I should, how wide?
Sure, through the chair, Councilor Fortini. The bicycle lanes proposed along Howden Boulevard in Vauden and Hanover, between the curb and the actual curb, I believe the average measurement is 1.8 meters. 1.8 meters. So a sidewalk machine would fit through.
So we're gonna talk about this tonight. I know Councilor Fitzgerald probably so added that. I think you should go down to the Danforth. They got the curbs. We'll see. All the snow's piled there. They can't get out. So we're not gonna have an issue, I know, unless we're gonna have more equipment. The budget will go up more. But anyway, I still want to get always residents engaged more on the bike lanes because, like I say, I like to keep everyone happy, but when it comes now, I know it's Easter, people are gonna have people over, and then they're gonna be blocking the bike lanes, and that's no good either. So either way, we're not gonna keep everyone happy at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. Next, Councillor Power.
Thank you, and through the chair. I just got a question. I sat on committee last night about these e-scooters, and I listened to the 3 vendors go through their proposals. Only one of them actually said that they slow down when they go into non-regulated areas. So it's obviously going through their GPS, and they can't get on, when they get on a sidewalk, it slows down and comes to a safe stop. Do all 3 vendors have that same option, or is it just the one that does it?
Yes, through the chair, yes, so all 3 operators, that was one of the requirements, is they had that ability to regulate speed as well as completely shut down. So in the case of a sidewalk, they have the capability, all 3 of those vendors have the capability of shutting down completely, so there's no sidewalk riding permitted in the city. And then in locations where there are high pedestrian traffic, we have the ability to regulate speed so that, you know, that 20 kilometers an hour, that citywide can be reduced. I believe we're using 15 or 12 kilometers an hour through.
But all 3 are automatic, because only one vendor did
Mentioned
say
it
it was automatic. As soon as they hit the curb, slows right down.
You know, we made that a requirement
Good, okay.
of the RFP.
I just wanted to double check that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Power. Next, Mayor Brown.
So, I'm glad we're having this conversation again. And I say this many times, we have a challenge with rising rates of obesity. We want to encourage healthy lifestyles, and active transportation is part of that. I know there is acrimony when you change existing neighborhoods. It's easier to do in new neighborhoods, but when I look at the long-term goal to create an active transportation network that people will use, I know it's in the best interest of our city. But I'm going to bring up a topic that I've raised when we talked about this before, and that is when you have these active transportation laneways, one worry I've heard is, you know, there is a passionate cycling community right now that loves to use the existing lanes, and they are passionate, and that is an understatement, but I want to grow it. I want to get someone who's currently not cycling to change their behavior and cycle. And the number one concern that I hear from someone who's not part of the current cycling community is it safe? And you know, how do you create that sense of you know, how to really, this is where the cars go and this is where the bike lanes go? Because even from motorists, I hear concerns that, you know, there's confusion of, you know, who's, you know, where a car can go, where a bike can go. And so people that are opposed to the lanes have that concern that they could be a safety hazard. And then I've got people that have contemplated buying a bike. And that's part of the goal here. It's not just to service the small group that use it right now. The biggest goal in this is to see thousands of residents buy a bike, change their behavior. How do you do that? And I think part of that is it needs to be very clear. You know, Toronto actually invests in those, you know, those separations. But when I googled up this, you know, the proper standards for bike lanes, first thing that comes up is the green paint for the most common type of cycling infrastructure includes the bike symbol and the green paint on a solid white line adjacent to it. And I'm looking at successful active transportation photos around the world, and it's all colored. We're not colored here, and so you can see why there's confusion. And so what I'd like added to this motion is an amendment that says I want to see a plan back for the painting of our active transportation to have a clear delineation of where you can go. And then I think you can actually grow. You get more people with confidence saying, yes, it's very clear, this is the safe area to go. But right now, and you know, I'm a supporter of active transportation, and you know, people, you bring this up and they think it would be a criticism. It's not. I want to see new people to pick up the sport. I think this is one of the things that's necessary. So I'd like to have a plan back of how we can paint our active transportation footprint to make it very clear and distinguishable of where you can go. I want to get to a point where, you know, Councillor Vicente says, I'm going to buy a bike and I'm going to bike to work on this path. If he wants to bike, he can bike. I want to see an example where Councillor Fertini says, I'm buying that bike and I'm going to be cycling all through my ward. But you know, we need to build that. You know, Field the dreams. If you build it, they will come. I know Councillor Santos referenced to me that there's a cost to painting. Well, let's see those costs, because if we're going to do it, let's do it properly. And if it's an increase to create a active transportation network that will be used in a much more real way. The biggest complaint you get about bike lanes, people aren't using them. Okay, well, I take that as a challenge. You know, what additional is required to get them to use it? I'd love to see this like Holland, where everyone's using them all over the place. Councillor Fertini can lead a pack of cyclists. He can be Fertini's Bramley Cyclist Club. But if you Field the dreams, if you build it, they will come. And I think this is a component that's necessary. So I'd love to have a plan back as quickly as possible on how we could do that.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brown. Since my name is Carl, I'll just say that I do own a bike and I like to ride it when I like. Thank you. Thank you. Nelson, do you have a response?
Only to suggest through the chair that we do follow provincial guidelines. So the province does an excellent job at laying out, for consistency's sake across the province, and that use of green paint has been applied at strategic locations along our infrastructure, typically at intersections, areas where we want to draw or raise awareness, conflict points, transit, turn lanes, that sort of thing. But so we'll definitely summarize that and provide it within a report to a future committee meeting. We have no problem doing that.
So I guess the question is, why do we see it in Toronto and not in Brampton? I know we got that bridge where it's painted, but in general, it's not painted, and there's confusion. And so when I go downtown Toronto, is it because of the density? But it's very clear of where a cyclist can go and where he can't go. I want to have that clarity here.
Again, through the chair, I think on a move forward basis, that green paint application has definitely been incorporated into a lot of our projects. That being said, there is some work we have to go back to some of the infrastructure where we didn't incorporate that green paint, and maybe this year might be that good opportunity, or a future year with the budget, to bring those facilities up to standard.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Councillor Fortini.
Quickly, and I agree with Mayor Brown. I drive on Central Parkway almost 3, 4, 5 times a day, or I go up to the bakery. People are passing me on the bike lanes because they don't know there's a bike lane there. And you want Hanover where it's painted green, they kind of know. You know, what are we going to do now when it comes to those high rises there, because we got a lot of complaints on that, when they have to close their parking lot twice a year for maintenance for about 4 or 5 days, and they have to park on the road now, we got bike lanes, where are those 1,000 cars gonna go? Because they used to get permits for the road to park overnight while they're doing the maintenance in the parking lot below. Where are we gonna put them? So maybe we have to schedule with them when the events are not there and let them use Jacuzzi Park, because they have to do it by law, maintenance twice a year on high rises. And that's where they used to get the permits before.
Yeah, through the chair, I think what we could do is work with our friends in Public Works and engineering to look at opportunities to support where those residents could park. I know there's a school directly across the street, so for instance, maybe it's working with the condominium boards to schedule their parking lot maintenance in a time when the school's not in use, and perhaps we could work with the school board to allow the residents to
So long
park
as we
there.
don't push them, there's that school there. So long as we don't push them on the side streets, there are already problems over the garbage now. The other thing is, we look at these bike lanes painted green, and it's a provincial thing. Why doesn't, if it's a provincial, we're following the provincial mandate, why is it not in the book showing the difference between the bike and the lane when you go for your tests?
Pardon? Sorry, through the chair, I didn't get the
know when
last part of
you
that,
actually
sorry.
go get your tests, you have all for your permits, like your license? Why it's not in there?
Oh, sorry, through the chair, so you're asking about permitting to ride?
Well, because it's a provincial
actual
mandate,
license?
so someone's getting his license, you'll already know the difference between the bike lane and not bike lane.
Right.
You know, if they're gonna provide the education.
There's definitely a gap in education.
Yeah.
I think that's our role as a municipality, is to do that, and we do our best in providing information like the campaign, the Streets for People campaign, but a license isn't required to operate a bicycle in the province as of yet.
No,
and I
for
don't
the
think there's-
bicycle. I'm saying when you go get your driver's license for your
Oh,
car. They
sorry.
should provide that, because we kind of know whether we have a.
Correct.
Someone, if you're gonna start providing the education, they gotta start off from the first step. We should provide that education already there.
Right.
That's, so.
Yeah, my understanding now is that driver's ed incorporates the bicycle lanes and that sort of thing, that education piece. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Next, Councillor Power.
Much more time, thanks through you, Chair. Can we do something about communication? Like, and I think we've said this on a number of different matters throughout everything that we've done through the city. We don't communicate enough with our residents, right? They need to know that you need to yield around a bike lane and not drive through them. They need to know that the bike lane's coming. And I know we sat on a meeting and I showed you a picture of a board that was on a pole upside down to say that the bike lane's coming. Nobody's reading that, right? So we need to, Councillor Paleshi reads like that though. And we need to be better with educating our residents, and we need to be more proactive with it, and communication needs to be better. I'm all in favor of active bike lanes. I just wish that we communicated it better.
Thank you very much, Councillor Power. I think I've exhausted my speakers list, so we have motion moved by Councillor Santos that the report from Nelson Cadet, Acting Senior Manager of Planning, Building and Growth Management, to the Committee of Council, meeting of March 8th, regarding the Active Transportation Master Plan implementation for 2022-2023. Annual report, all wards be received, and that staff report back on a plan for painting, coloring the active transportation footprint. And staff have also received other comments from members. All in favor? That carries. Next, we'll move on to item 11.2.2, request to begin procurement for 2023 road resurfacing all wards. This was held by Councillor Keenan. Councillor.
Thank you, and through the chair, it's finally great to be able to talk about something that we haven't talked about today. I held this because of the bike lanes. I only held it based on what we've already talked about, which was the snow removal. And like I was looking, let's not put the cart before the horse. I know we're going to talk about snow removal being a huge issue. And what I see with the concrete curbs going in, I want to make sure that we have a plan for this, because the amount of calls we're getting about snow removal this season has been outrageous. So if we're implementing more things that are going to make it harder, I would like to hear from either the CEO or yourself, Rob, on do we have a plan for once these permanent curbs go in, that we're going to be able to clear the snow, because I'm going to hold whoever accountable based on this here today, or I would suggest that we move forward with procurement and not install those right now until we have that plan. But I'm happy, if you're going to tell me that you got it and you're going to be responsible for it, then I'll go ahead, and enough spoken about.
So through the chair to Councillor Keenan, we are, Frank and I, and I'll bring Frank down because he's the expert on our snow clearing in the city, but we are working with Nelson and his group to ensure that the spaces are wide enough that we can get our sidewalk machinery down there to have it cleared.
So in moving this report and going to procurement and not pulling anything out, we're going to be confident, Frank, thanks for coming down, that we are going to be able to clear these properly so that A, the safety of the residents, and B, we're not fielding calls. As we heard from Councillor Santos, Uber's now using these bike lanes in the winter to deliver food, and so it's great to see, but we got to make sure that they're not just for biking, right? It's active transportation, so they got to be clear all year round. So I'll wait to hear what the response is.
Through the chair, Councillor Keenan, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve on our end just for the timing to get the other material, because we're going to have to remove a majority of the snow that falls into the bike lane. So it's going to be blowers with triaxle trucks to haul the snow out of the bike lanes from the snow that's been plowed from the street onto the bike lane. So it's going to be a full operation in order to remove the snow. We just have to work with the logistics on timing and how it's going to be done, because we don't want to clear the snow on the bike lane and then the plow goes by and plows it back in. So it's all got to be done through logistics. And myself and a group of people with Nelson's group have been sitting down and going over all these logistics over the last couple of years. So these are things that we are working on. It's just getting all the logistics once they go in on how we're going to remove it and such. So there might be a few hiccups at the beginning, but once we iron all the logistics out, we should be able to handle it.
So when we're looking at this, these are going to be the first permanent curbs that we put in the city, correct? Okay, we're talking 7 kilometers? Initially 7 kilometers. So what I'm hoping is that we can, between now and the next winter, we can have a plan for those 7 kilometers to implement where we're not having the hiccups. And I understand that we have hiccups and things happen, but we're going to be talking about hundreds of kilometers of bike lanes that you're going to need to figure out. I'm just asking that when we implement these first 7, that this is the time to figure it out between now and next winter.
And that's our plan is, to the chair, just to make sure that we can hammer out all those logistics in the small section that we're implementing now, so that when we do go more citywide with these locations, that we have a more of a wholesome way of doing it. So at this point, I believe Vaughan Street is the first one we're doing. Vaughan and Howden is the first one. So we have machines, like our sidewalk units right now are 1.5 meters wide, so they fit within the 1.8 meter bike lane, so we will be able to cast the snow away. It's just when, again, it's the logistics part of it, when the roads are plowed and then when we can go in there right after and clear it. So.
Yeah, it's no easy task, but I'm sure you're very well capable of making sure it happens. I just wanted to raise the concern. Right. I don't want to have to be taking these out because all the issues around snow removal in the future. So I'm happy with the answers that I got. I have no more questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Will you move the report?
I will move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Keenan. The clerk has advised that we keep the discussion to this report. Next speaker, Councillor Pleshy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rob, the Sandalwood Parkway from Sun Forest to Huron, Ontario. So what I noticed on the in traveling this stretch of road 2-3 times a day, the westbound lane is significantly more deteriorated than the eastbound lane. And I don't fully understand why. I think mainly because, and this is a no truck route, but we get a lot of trucks going westbound and not too many going eastbound. And I think that's probably why. With the massive separation, even in grade separation of this road, would we ever think about just doing the westbound lane instead of doing both? Or do we need that kind of? I'll stick to the
Through the
English
chair,
question. Thank you.
Councillor Palash, yes, we can look into that. But the way it has been taken now is based on the road capacity and road quality index we run every year to the programming.
Okay.
But we can go out and look at it again. But this is just a beginning procurement report at this point.
Yeah.
And the tenders will be going out maybe in a month.
Okay.
So we can always make some changes.
So is the report before us, is that road there because it's met its timeline?
Correct. Because we always go for 15 to 20 years timeline.
Okay.
And the condition assessment of the road.
And we're going ahead and approving that based on it meeting a timeline?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay. So I have a little bit of an issue with that, if we haven't gone out there to see the actual quality of the road, for it to make the list.
Through the chair, as I said before, we do have a consultant who has equipment. They walk the whole equipment on the roads. One is, first of all, we do a condition assessment, identify
Sorry,
the roads.
can you repeat that, the equipment?
Yeah, so through the chair, we have a specialized equipment which will run on the road.
Yeah.
And it will basically map up all the quality of the road.
Okay.
And see what the quality index of the road comes out.
Okay.
So that has been done after we go through the condition assessment. So condition assessment, as I said before, is to identify the roads which can be qualified for the resurfacing.
Okay.
And over and above that, we go after that and do condition assessment of the road by the equipment.
And then it comes to a report?
That it comes to a report.
Oh, okay, okay, fantastic. And the only reason I ask is because I can, I know a lot of these roads and I could name, a few other ones that could really use some attention. But only because, and I'll use Conservation Drive from Kennedy to Colonel Bertram, doesn't need to go all the way to here, Ontario, but Conservation from Kennedy to Colonel Bertram. The region has been in there doing a tremendous amount of work on the side of the road, and you can see that with the amount of machines that have been going on that road, it needs a resurface, and it just got a resurface probably 2 years ago, maybe, I think. Yet the region's contractors, they're doing some massive work on the side, and I think they're ripping up that road pretty good. So if we can maybe just go back to the region and tell them they have to resurface it, that would be great.
Yes, through the chair, yes, we definitely can look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palash. Next, Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know we met quite a few times on the roads. When we do these resurfacing, how come we only use a hopper, like Mississauga does around?
Through the chair, yes, we do the hopper, you mean the shuttle buggy?
The shuttle buggy. So
Yeah.
the asphalt comes out 480 degrees, HL3 or HL8. It's month of August, June or July is one thing, but when it hits October, it comes back at 250. You don't put in the hopper. Now we go to a couple of roads. The plow took all the asphalt out because it didn't pack. So I've never seen the hopper going into the hopper to reheat the shuttle buggy.
Yeah, through the chair, yes,
You know where a hopper is, Michael? I heard you talk.
Yeah, through the chair, yes, basically it's shuttle buggy, that's what they call it in the
Yeah.
industry. So most of the major road, when we have a lot of roads coming out by one, like we have maybe 10,000 tons or maybe 500 tons, when quantity is big, we ask for shuttle buggies. But for small streets, I think the trucks just come with a 400 degrees centigrade and they just lay it out. So that's been done in maybe a few hours. But if you want, we can look into that, but there's additional cost for having a shuttle buggy on each and every small road,
Yeah, but it's month of June, July, and August when it's 30 degrees, I understand. But when we start hitting the 15th of October, even on high-rise, any construction, you have to put heat. You have to put hot water even in the concrete. Meanwhile, they're putting the asphalt down. It's not compressed. It cools down. They fall behind. The plow came by, and I'll take it, we've seen roads, and the plows took all the asphalt. It was just done last year. So we gotta provide in the contract, when it hits a certain date, you have to use the hopper or the shell to reheat the asphalt, or else You know what? I understand there's warranty, but it doesn't look good for us when we go there now. There's holes everywhere. And they gotta go back and regrind again, even though it's a warranty, but it makes us look like we're not doing the right thing. So that's one thing I really
Yeah, through the
like
chair,
to say.
definitely we can look into that. We can put us.
Yeah.
So maybe instead of date, I'll put a temperature wise.
Yeah.
So irrespective of the dates, we can still say 10 degrees and above
Yeah.
or something like that, and that way
Absolutely, and
we
I
are
know,
covered for the whole contract.
you know,
yes.
they continue doing roads until the asphalt closes, and I get it, you know, until November, December, depends the weather. But once it hits October, the weather's not warm no more. By the time it comes out from the plant, especially if they're coming from 401 or down at Lakeshore, by the time it gets up here, it drops to 200 degrees. You can't compress that no more. It's not gonna hold. That road within 8 years will be gone, and this year, we're gonna go there. The roads have holes everywhere. That was just done this October, the end of October, first week of November.
Through the chair, yes, we'll definitely look into that.
A motion moved by Councillor Keenan to receive requests to begin procurement for 2023 road resurfacing for all wards, and that the purchasing agent be authorized to commence the procurement for the 2023 road resurfacing in all wards. All in favor, any opposed? That carries. Members of committee, we will now recess for lunch. We will come back in 40 minutes? 1 o'clock.
Let's just do everything.
No, there's, the next discussion will take time, so we'll recess now. So we'll be back at 1 o'clock. Resume today's Committee of Council meeting. Our next item, Mr. Clerk, is 11.3.3, discussion item at the request of myself, but also on behalf of other members of committee with regards to snow clearing operations. I'll just start off by saying, first of all, thank you to all of our public works staff for having worked tirelessly through the last storm event, which I think when you look at it, you can see staff are still working 3 days after it was finished, and but it was a very heavy snowfall. It was significant in terms of the amount of snow and the type of snow, and it was very clear, at least from my eyes, that even the equipment was having a difficult time navigating through the streets, pushing the snow. I personally witnessed snowplows, the big ones, slipping and sliding on Queen Street, I witnessed the smaller ones that do our sidewalks struggling to push snow even just forward. Even with a camber on their blade, they were having a hard time pushing that. And so it became very clear to members of council and committee that it was going to take longer, but we did receive a lot of feedback from residents. I would be remiss if I didn't say that a lot of residents are disappointed with how it was done in this particular snowfall event, keeping in mind that from my perspective, snow clearing operations leading up to this have been, I think, quite good. And but other members may have different opinions, and I wanted just to open this up for members to have an opportunity to dialogue with staff and to see what it is that we might want to do to improve things for the next time. So I'll go to my speakers list. Councillor Pleshy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So thank you to all staff for doing such a great job. Appreciate all the hard work that you put in over, the snow events. I've received a ton of emails about the level of service that our contractors are, I feel like, just not producing the same as they have in the past. I understand that this snow event was a little bit different in terms of, the amount, how fast, and how wet it was. It was heavy, like my back's still sore. I get it, but I didn't see any follow-up after that. Like it's, I witnessed loaders that were plowing courts, and they would put their bucket down and then raise it up 6 inches and plow the road, and literally left 6 inches of snow all over the road. And I just couldn't understand why. And seeing, some of the sidewalks that have been done, you look at, I can name a ton of intersections that where the sidewalks cross at the intersection. It's literally an X, and where that triangle is outside on the road is a massive pile of snow, making it very difficult for people to turn corners. A number of residents, I had one this morning actually, stop me and show me the pictures that he cleans up the sidewalk, and he's a corner property, cleans up the sidewalk, cleans up that whole triangle, and then he shows me another picture of when the snowplow came and completely pushed all of the snow onto the triangle. This is no reflective of you gentlemen. I hope you understand that. I feel like our contractors have really, they have really, they've not done well this year. I'm sure you have seen the fence of the homeowner that the loader's pushing the snow up against their decorative fence for the second time this year now. That's bending the fence. And I don't want residents to have these issues. I understand, we all have residents that they'll contact us within, the first few hours of the snow event. And for whatever reason, I understand, those, and you won't see those emails, for the most part, we'll handle those. But it's those ones that I get that say 72 hours after the snow has stopped falling, and this is what my street still looks like. In my own street, and you won't get a call from me about my street, but my own street is one loader came by one time during the the course of the whole time, and now all of that snow that was left have turned into ruts and now have frozen. So still people, as of today, it's a little bit better because the sun helped, but no salt was ever put on any of the roads that I witnessed anyways, except for maybe some of the majors. There's a serious lack of service that from the contractors this year, and I don't understand why. On the other side, though, there's Jim Archdeacon Rec Center had half of their parking lot plowed, and I understand the people who plow Jim Archdeacon they're allowed to work 14 hours or 16 hours. Somebody clarify me that?
So through the chair, because a significant event was called on Friday, they'd be allowed to work 16 hours.
So they work 12 hours and were sent home early. And I don't understand why. And then somebody, when I called to say, hey, half the parking lot's been done, then, we had somebody go over and do the best job that they could do, but by that time, everybody's parking there, and, I literally witnessed a mother with a child pulling the bag across the parking lot, because the parking lot was full, and just having such a tough time. And, it's stuff like that we have to look at. We have to make sure that, it doesn't happen. I understand the second shift that came in after at Jim Archdeacon, there were people that were coming into that shift saying, why was the first shift able to leave early? I don't know why. They were left 4 hours early. I don't understand. So I don't ask you these questions, or I don't say these statements for you guys to come up and say, they'll do better or anything like that. I say that, on the next go around, like the winter is ending for us, but going into the next year, if we're gonna have these same problems, like they have to shape up. And I know it's different contractors from across the city, and I don't know if it's different, in other parts of the city, but I have issues with the contractor servicing Ward 2, and specifically a lot of the other areas down in the south of Ward 6, West End and south, where I have other streets down there that I still don't know if they were plowed. And there are other streets that were plowed only on one side, and then it wasn't like they went down and then they came back. You could tell that the plow pushed snow up on the one side, and then 2 days later, they came down on the other side. But by that time now, and you can literally see half the road on Lake Crest, half the road is bare, the other half is snow covered, because they were just that far behind. And I don't understand why something like that would happen. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's my rant for today.
Thank you, Councillor Pleshy. Next, Councillor Fortini.
Yeah, thank you. I guess we all got complaints. So when we send these plows out, because I know we keep blaming the contractor. Who tells them to put the plows down? Is it us or is it them?
Through the chair, we tell them when to plow and what to salt at.
Okay. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, I was up at Vankirk. I got a call from one of Pleshy's residents who works at Chrysler, and I went there with my truck. They didn't plow for 3 days, and I understand they fall behind, and there was roads also in my area the same way. But now, the tracks already went on top, cars, they flattened it out. This guy came along and put the plow down, and big chunks threw everything on the sidewalks. People couldn't get out of their driveway. And even the snow blower, even by hand you couldn't do it, these chunks were big. So when they do something like that, they fall behind. We should tell them, don't put the plow down, because you're just gonna bury them. It's not like fresh snow now. Now it's all ice. Just put the salt. They go around, they do the salt, and I find a lot of places, even our Belshut, and this is gonna happen in the bike lanes. People come along, we clean the buses, everything good. Snow plow come down and just bury everything. We gotta also tell the drivers to slow down. There's mailboxes full. The plows are on an angle. The faster you go, the farther you throw the snow. Now, these new places, like mostly subdivision, they only have like 2 feet boulevard. I got residents saying, I clean my sidewalk, and the guy put 5 feet back on top. So we gotta, we gotta tell these snow guys to slow down, and that's one thing. If we're gonna start cleaning these windrows, I don't know how we're gonna do it. With all these plows back and forth, the way they're doing it now, we're just gonna get more complaints. But, it was a lot of snow, it was heavy. I know it's, I seen even with my trucks and stuff, they're sliding all over the place, but at the end of the day, they have to try to provide the service. I also seen what Councillor Pleshy said on certain areas of mine. They went down one way, they come back the other way. But we have trucks, they're single axles. Before we used to have the side wing. I haven't seen these side wings unless it's on major big roads. They don't put the side wing. So they're actually, the trucks are small, the plow's only 10, well, it's 12 feet. When you turn on an angle, it becomes 10 feet. The roads are 30 feet. They go one way, they come the other, and they leave 10 feet each side of the curb. And the parked cars, we gotta get rid of these parked cars. There's roads where garbage couldn't be picked up. The plows couldn't get by, and I don't blame the drivers. One salt truck sat there for 2 hours on one street because he couldn't back up. Like, that's not fair also for the driver. And if we give a ticket $30, it's not gonna help. Toronto's giving $200 tickets and towing. We gotta see, these are mostly homes with 10 cars. Now, I understand the car breaks on one side. There's cars parked on both sides. You know, we gotta do something with that because we can't blame also the plowing guys. The loader came on one street, he couldn't fit. Even moving the loader back and forth, the wheels couldn't fit on one street. So he had to back up, and that's a loader. But if it was a salt truck or a plow truck, he would have sat there for 3 hours until someone came to help him to back up. So that guy, that time he lost there, he could have plowed 20 other roads. And when there is a parked car and you go around it, you're putting 3 times more snow on the 2 neighbors behind because it all comes off, right, Franco? So that, and those are the people that, especially when they're seniors, say, how am I gonna get out of here? Anyway, I'm glad it was a little bit warmer because if it was a little bit colder, we would have had 50 centimeters. I know it was heavy, but it would have been, it would have been a lot more snow. And we got another 10 centimeters coming here this weekend. And I'm glad some of the courts have been removed because some of the courts couldn't even get in. When I remember when I first got elected, we used to do that like in December, January, and then we do it at the end. There's one thing I seen removing the courts this weekend, and it was our city guy, and I came out and I asked him, are they removing that snow? And he said, yeah, we got to make sure the drivers come out of the vehicle and look. Do you remember what happened in Toronto about 10, 12, 13 years ago? They couldn't find those 2 kids. They found them when the snow thawed because they were playing in the tunnels. The loader picked them up and took them away. The loader driver will not feel that weight. So they got to come out of the vehicle, make sure that, because I know there's a lot of kids that go out there and these at dead ends, they have, you know, start playing around. You don't know who's in there. It's their job. It's very important for them to check that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Frattini. Next, I have Mayor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chair Vicente. I want to say I too was inundated with complaints about the service level, and so I think we need to have a frank conversation with the contractor. The driveway issue is one, saying, you know, we know we have to clear our own driveway, but when the city makes it 10 times worse, it's frustrating. And there are some photos where it just looks ridiculous. And so I hope that we can find out why the efforts seem to be not at the standard we've had in previous years. The other thing I got a lot of photos about was, looks like a plow went down the road but only did half the road. And so clearly there's still a ton of snow on half the road and then half the road is cleared, and why that would be the case. Like under the contract, they're supposed to clear the majority of the road. Wouldn't that be the case?
Through the chair to Mayor Brown, yes, that would be the case. They should be doing both sides of the road.
And I want to thank you for helping us deal with this litany of complaints. Maybe we need to have a conversation with the contractor and say, we haven't had this many complaints of a previous service level, and give the examples illustrated with half-cleaned roads and driveways that are blocked in a manner that we contributed to. And so I think there's a lot of examples and photos that have been sent to us, but I think this calls for a meeting with the contractor. You know, there's going to be a new contract. When does the 7-year contract end?
The end of next year.
End of next year. So they've got 1 year left, and you'd think they're going to want to compete for that contract again. It should be in their self-interest not to leave us with the sour taste of poor performance. And so I think every complaint that a councillor has been given should be relayed to them, so they know that we've been very disappointed with the standard of care. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Next, I have Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, thanks for all the work that happened. And Frank, thanks for fielding all our emails. I know that once we get complaints, we fire them off to you, and, you know, I must say they do get taken care of in a timely fashion, so thank you for that. It's just we're trying to avoid the amount of complaints that we're getting in. And, you know, just to touch on a couple points, I agree with Councillor Fortini when he says we need to raise the ticket pricing for cars parked on the street as well as towing them. And then to touch on Mayor Brown's comment about the contract, it's been 7 years. Looking at what we're going through, we really need to take a good look at the contract as far as, you know, what measures do we have for poor performance, right? Is there capabilities in that contract to bring in other contractors, to have that contractor back charged to, you know, the city's paying good money, obviously, if they wanted the contract for 7 years. We're paying good money for what we want to be a good service. We must have the ability to hold the contractor to account. If they can't deliver on what they're saying they're doing, we need to have something. If not in there now, I don't know what the contract looks like. I don't know what we have in there, and I would love to hear back what steps we have to take within that contract. But knowing that this is the last year for that, we really, if we don't have those parameters within that contract, we must look to put them in. We must look to have our residents be able to do something about poor performance with something as huge as snow removal. And I would look to hear back from CAO or whomever on that topic. But I think that should be looked at now, knowing that contract's coming up. And I would ask, is there any that you know of within the contract that could be addressed, if it's a back charge, if it's bringing in other contractors or so on and so forth?
So through the chair to Councillor Keenan, there are penalties within the contract, but it's more for not showing up on time and those types of things, because we have an hour where once the snowstorm, once we make the call, they have an hour to get all their trucks out onto the roads and start plowing. So with that, I know we've talked to most of the ward pairing councillors with our winter meetings with Frank and I. The next contract, we will look at penalties. We'll look at Mississauga and Vaughan and what they're doing, as well as we'll structure the contract maybe a little differently so that we have 3 sets of trucks going out at 3 sets different times, instead of going from main roads to collector roads and then a second set of trucks. We'll have 3 sets of trucks going out. So we're putting that together as we speak. We want to come back to council in a workshop to maybe go over that tender to make sure we have our options covered for the next, which will include windrows, which will include sidewalks, and then go out to tender and see which options we want to take when the prices come back.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that, because I think the way that we fix this moving forward is how we issue that contract. And I think that will fix a lot of our issues if we do it correctly, if we take the time and do it properly. I think that we'll see much better results moving forward. But again, I just want to thank the staff for everything that they are doing, taking these emails from us and our residents for many, many days. And I will say, I did see a lot of plows still out in the downtown core. I know we had a lot of complaints from a lot of our store owners and residents within the downtown core. And I did see, I think I counted about 4 or 5 trucks last night, late last night in the downtown core, still working at this. So I do appreciate that and the work and the effort that's put in behind it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Keenan. Back to Mayor Brown.
Yeah, I'd love to know more about the penalties provisions that exist in other contracts. I think we need to be able to hold negligence accountable. Just now, there was a member of our city staff that's watching council discuss this, someone that I know is a very dedicated, longtime City of Brampton employee, and she wrote, the snowplow went down my street in the middle once, 4 feet on both sides left with a ton of snow. Traffic could only go one way. People were backing up to allow others to get through this nightmare. We have never seen it this bad. They came Monday night to fix it. But there's an example of that this is the worst that a dedicated Bramptonian has ever seen it. And so there was too many red flags in this, that there was a very poor standard of service.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Santos.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair, and obviously agree with the sentiment with my colleagues, but a couple of things. I wanted to say thank you to Frank and Rob for, again, addressing to the concerns and reacting to the residents' concerns when we brought them to you over the weekend. Thank you for that. Great job. My question is on flexibility with respect to the current contract and going into the next contract, making sure that that there is the flexibility for things to being taken care of after the fact, but also timing-wise and speed. And I bring that up because I know that downtown, for example, had significant issues, and I know that is not necessarily contract. That's not a contractor, that is city staff that take care of that. So that being said, with the timing with respect to downtown, for example, we need the flexibility. And I know that sometimes we're restricted in the number of hours and at certain times that staff are able to work. We need to work through that because we need staff to, especially in downtown, react accordingly and have that flexibility to clear the sidewalks, the roads, et cetera, in the most fastest way possible because of safety issues. Particularly in the downtown as well. So flexibility is important, flexibility and making sure that our staff can work those hours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Santos. Next, Councillor Fertini.
Very quickly, when we clean these trails in the parks, that's us, different department?
Through the chair to Councillor Fortini, that's, it's part of the big contract, but it's run by Parks. So it's a different company that does the trails. So they get called out at the same time that we would call out sidewalks. But and they use trucks instead of sidewalk machines.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they use the pickup trucks.
So it's a different, I mean, it's actually much easier to do the 10-foot wide, 3-meter wide pathways with the trucks.
Yeah, and I agree. No,
So
because
it gets done and sometimes the sidewalks aren't finished, or in this case, this weekend, sidewalks got re-plowed in from the second pass of the trucks. And that's what we've been doing for the last couple of days, is just going back and cleaning up sidewalks and corners where the plows where the sidewalk machines couldn't punch through because of the amount of snow. We've gone back with skid steers and loaders to get rid of that.
Yeah, because I got some emails, people saying, look, trails and everything's clean. Meanwhile, I can't walk on the sidewalk. I gotta go work and put food on my table. They don't understand it's two different things. But when we look at the contract, those swivel machines, they're 60 horsepower. They're very heavy. They get stuck all the time when they go off the sidewalk. And it's hard for a driver to be on a sidewalk that's 5 feet and the plow is 5 feet. The wheelbase is just 4 feet 6. You just go off 6 inches and it's a little bit softer, you get stuck. You know, you go up north, they use a lot of the Kubotas or those tractors V-plow. Those things will go through anything. And they're only like 30 horsepower because what happens when it's heavy now, if we get a little bit of freezing rain or the snow melts and the freeze we go, underneath that sidewalk, it thaws, our sidewalks go like this and then we have to go around mud jacking them. And that costs money too because they're very heavy. You know, and the Bobcat, at least if you get stuck, you could pull yourself out. Those things there, I see them stuck all the time. Always. The other thing, when we do the bike lanes, the curbs, is it going to be one curb or are they going to be separated pieces? Do we know? Yeah, to separate the bike lane from the road. Yeah.
Through the chair, from what I understand, they look like, almost like the curbstones that you would have in a parking lot, but they're higher.
Right.
And they're more rounded, but they're individuals. I think they're 4 or 5 foot sections that they're modular that connect together.
So they'll connect together, there'll be a space.
No, I believe they connect together and there's a space underneath them.
So
for
those are those precast.
They're precast, yeah.
And so if that's going to happen if the plow doesn't stay exactly in there and you hit it, it's just going to move over.
Well, but I believe they're going to be anchored. I think there's spots for anchors to put them in.
So we got to be careful. And if we leave a space, that plow hits it, that driver's going to go right through the window because you're not going to be able to see it. Okay, that's going to be very challenging. Very challenging, and I know what's going to happen. We clean and the trucks are going to put it back, and I think when they're flat, the truck goes there now and it cleans everything. I know for the safety issue, it's nice, but winter issue, we're going to have a problem.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Fertini. I now have speakers list, Medeiros and Power. Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, very quickly. I guess piggybacking on a lot of the comments, thank you very much for the work. And it just seems every year when after a snowstorm, we put you guys in the firing line, and then, you know, the comments seem to be recycled every year. So I guess just in terms of, would you guys be able to sort of summarize, were there major themes that came out of this storm per se? Is it A, lack of capacity, B, lack of drivers, C, is there some themes that, because, you know, it's one thing for us to share comments, but if you can't do anything with them, you know, it's one thing to say a penalty, but you kind of, you know, I'd like to understand, is there something about the service that they're providing? And obviously there was some issues with it. And is this something that we've seen before with this, or is this unique to this snow thing? And what do we plan on doing about it in terms of mitigation? So I don't know if you have those learnings as of now, if that's something that you're still going through that discovery phase, because that's what I'd be interested. Is there some general themes that, you know, this company, because they're also, the snow contracts are broken up throughout the city, right? It's not just one company. So was there a theme that these guys didn't have these machines, they should have these machines, they should have these drivers? And, you know, in our next contract, you know, this is our recommendations to council, how are we going to address that? Does that make sense? Just for us to logically understand, because there's a lot of things, but I still don't know what happened, or I still don't know what's the lack of service that we provided.
So, through the chair, Councilor Medeiros, so there was a few themes that we've experienced, I guess, from the last 6 years plus. The snowfall aside, because it was heavy, fast, it came down. Like, we had 32 centimeters of snow in less than 12 hours. That was heavy and wet, and it was hard for, especially our sidewalk machines, to push. Even though we were in our V-blade, when we switched to our blowers, the blowers kept getting full of, and getting plugged, so we had to shut down, clear that. So it took a long time for us to get through to make them passable. And then we were having the windrows at the intersections that we had to send in backhoes and loaders to clear so that we can get through. So that was one of the pain points that we had with this snowfall. The other pain point was we were running out of hours for our operators. So we were having to call them off the road, send them home, bring in new sets of drivers to come in to take it. So that was we were having a time gap in between. So we're trying to figure out a way that how we can minimize that impact when we're switching from their 16 hours or up to go in. So one of the things, and Rob mentioned that in our new contract, what we're looking to have is to have dedicated vehicles for the arterial roads, dedicated vehicles for our collector roadways, and dedicated vehicles for our local roadways. Because right now, the trucks that service the collector roadways service the local roadways. So if they're plowing the collectors for 8-9 hours, they have to go into the local network and plow. So now they only have 6 to 7 hours to do. So to answer a lot of the issues that were coming up, they were doing the one pass just because they wanted to make a clear path on the roadway so that they can make it passable for people to get through, because they were running out of hours and they had to come back to switch. And that's why sometimes we were getting, oh, the second pass happened the day after, because it was the second driver that came in who started the route and was going back over it, that they did the second pass. So that's kind of, if we have dedicated trucks for just the local roads and they have 14 to 16 hours to do the local road, so they can concentrate and do those second passes and the wide corners and open everything up nicely. So that's some of the things we're looking at for our next contract. Unfortunately, based on the contract we have now and the one more year that we have left, we're kind of stuck in what we have. But these are some of the things that we're looking at for our new contract.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, and notwithstanding the uniqueness of the snow that came down and the way it came down, all that other stuff, right? But it seems to be more common, I guess, with climate change and all this other stuff. But in terms of, it's great that you've sort of pinpointed, so you've given me sort of some rationale. Now I kind of understand, I can go away and understand why, and it's great that you plan on addressing it. So that gives me that sense of comfort. And piggybacking a little bit on what Mayor Brown said in terms of penalties or performance managing them within the context of the agreement that we have currently with the snow company, we're limited in terms of how we performance manage them, because that's the capacity, that's the number of hours, machines, that's there. However, we'll have the conversation with them about, you know, some of our dissatisfaction with the service, and, you know, how we might work together to address it. Because it's one of those things that, you know, it's no one's particular fault. However, right, it's not something that was in the contract, but I'm sure in the contract going forward, you know, there'll be consideration. But other than that, I really appreciate all the extra hours you guys put in, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councilor Medeiros, permission for the chair to be heard, please. Oh, the CAO wishes to speak. Mr. CAO, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to add one more comment that caused some confusion over the weekend. As most of you know, I was on the phone with members of council tracking service levels, and the situation that Councillor Pellecci mentioned, and the situation that the mayor mentioned, and also a first pass down the street. Our tracking mechanism shows that street has been serviced. So when you're calling in, it says it's been serviced, only to find out pictures are showing it's not. So that was causing some confusion as well. So we are going to try to fix that and address that moving forward as well.
Thank you very much, Marlon. The only other thing I think that we need to discuss then here is, I think the elephant in the room when it comes to these issues, and that is parked cars that obstruct the ability of the plows to be able to make their way through neighborhoods. I can tell you in Wards 1 and 5 that Councillor Santos and I represent, we drove around neighborhoods several times at different points throughout the storm. And it was clear from our callers just observing eyes that a lot of the streets that were not cleared, it was obvious that it was because there was a vehicle parked close to or at the entrance to that street or subdivision or whatever the situation may have been. And you could see clearly there was a vehicle that was parked there. The plow tried to make its way around that vehicle, and they had no choice but to reverse and move on to the next street that they could go to. Last night I did a drive-through, and you could see some streets that had been cleared since not being cleared initially, but the evidence of parked vehicles throughout that particular subdivision very clear. And so a question to you guys, what can we do about ensuring that residents here in the city of Brampton better understand that during a snow event, they should not be parking on the streets and preventing our crews, our contractors, from being able to do their job?
So to the chair, we've met extensively this winter season with bylaw to try to mitigate a lot of that happening. It's been our biggest problem. Our staff, we put on extra runners that go out as the storm's coming to put flyers in windows of the cars to say we're plowing, you know, we need you to move your cars, those types of things. We didn't want to start towing cars right away because the phone calls are going to come to you first. So through all our meetings that we've had on winter works, the plan is to meet with bylaw, and we have two, bylaw has a company on PO and traffic has a company on PO for towing. The plan is to next season start towing cars. We do need a spot to put them because the only spot to put them today is in Mississauga. So we would have to provide that with our towing companies that we're going to be working with, and make sure that we do have a couple facilities, summer facilities that we could use the parking lots, Credit View and Sesqui, that we could fence off and have those companies be able to use those spaces so that we can move those cars to those spaces. And to get your car back, you'd have to pay the fine to get it back. I think if we started to do that right at the beginning of next season, I'm hoping the issue will go away, but it's our biggest issue right now, is parked cars.
Okay, and I think that that's important. Like, it wasn't, like we mentioned it just briefly here today, but that really is one of the biggest drivers, forgive the pun, of you not being able to do your work in a lot of these streets. A question, when you tow a vehicle and you lay a fine for that tow or you charge for that tow, is that fine, does it pay for the cost of the tow and then some? Does it cover the cost?
To the chair, you will pay the tow company who will be running that lot the tow fee, which we will probably work with the company to figure out what that's gonna be, because we wanna put it on our website, and the daily fee that you leave your car there. So I think it's $60 a day in Mississauga. So you leave your car there for a week, it's 7 days, that's $60 a day. They would have to pay that up front to get the car back. So there's no cost to the city at all. It would be.
So in other words, it could potentially be, not that that's what we want to change behavior, but it is not revenue negative to the city.
Correct.
Okay. So my next question is, do the vehicles, if they are found to be parked in the middle of a snowstorm where you surpass that 5 centimeters and you're going to be plowing, do they need to be ticketed by bylaw officers before they could be towed by a tow vehicle service? That's my question.
Chair, no. So under the bylaw 9393, in the case of a snow event, the vehicles can be towed without, we have to have a body there, so our runners would be there to meet the tow truck driver, but we could tow the vehicle.
Okay, and so I think
Through you, Mr.
Paul
Chair.
wants to comment. Yeah.
Just to clarify, we don't need to ticket when we tow, we ticket when we tow. So not only do they get to get towed and have to pay the fees to the tow company, we also do a $75 ticket on that car as well.
So it's for clarity, does a bylaw officer need to be present for the vehicle to be removed from that location?
In my position, we would say no, but there's a continuity piece here. So we're responsible. If we're towing it, we want to make sure that it gets onto the tow, period. Once it gets onto the tow and they take responsibility for it, then we can move on. And that process usually takes us anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on how fast we can get a tow. Because we do have to do some paperwork for the tow companies. So we don't have to be there, but we do have to hand over some paperwork. If we don't do it in the front end, it takes us a lot longer to do it in the back end to chase it down.
Yeah.
And
So-
also through the chair,
Yeah, go
just
ahead.
to add to that, we have met with JP and his team, I won't say deputized, but going through a training process for our runners to be able to do the same amount of work so that we're filling out the paperwork properly so that we're following all the procedures.
So I think that's where we have an opportunity, because in the city of Brampton, this is a major issue. And I see not an opportunity, but a way for us to take advantage of what I am sure are a significant number of tow truck operators, and providing a framework or a system where when the city of Brampton begins snow operations, so like a signal is activated, or you've surpassed a threshold and the red light is on, if you will, that any tow truck operator who drives through any neighborhood throughout the city of Brampton and sees a vehicle parked which would obstruct snow clearing operations, for that vehicle to be towed. And given that a bylaw officer doesn't necessarily have to be present, if it was possible to use your words, to deputize that operator, whatever evidence they would need to collect before they tow the vehicle, et cetera, and then the vehicle is gone, and that deterrent now becomes real for the person who allowed their vehicle to be parked, notwithstanding the fact that it was snowing and they knew better. It would be, I think, a worthwhile exercise for us to look into how we could do that with a formalized system that everyone is understanding. And so I'm going to move that staff report back and develop a way that council can endorse, where we leverage tow truck operators or tow truck service providers to help us and assist us in enforcing this really pesky, difficult problem, which causes so much issue for us and for our residents. Paul?
Well, to you, Mr. Chair, and just a cautionary reminder, it is difficult for us to get tows. We do have a company on contract to do this for us, but tows are prioritized by safety needs, and safety needs go to collisions first. So if we have a snowstorm, they go to where the most pertinent need is at the time. and then we sort of fall back in the pecking order. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And I can tell you, just in case anybody is wondering, our daily storage fees are $75 a day in Mississauga, or $85. So when somebody goes picks up their car, they got to pay the initial storage charge, the admin fee, and then the additional storage charge for every day that it's in there.
So these are all details that could be worked out and come back in the report, but if there was a way for us to take care of the safety piece as one item, which you are already doing, and now create this different system, which has one responsibility solely, which is to ensure that it is well understood throughout the city of Brampton, if your car is found parked during a snowstorm, it's probably going to get towed. It could get towed. And that's the deterrent that I think people need to know, because you know what? All through social media, when as councillors we let residents know that we will tow vehicles, they're laughing at us because they know, they see that vehicles never get towed on their street. And so that's where their frustration comes, because they know we are telling them what the causes are, and they agree with us, but then they don't agree with the fact that we might actually tow that vehicle because they don't see it happening. And if there was a way for us to formalize and leverage, and understanding that there would be some contractors assigned and prioritizing safety and other top-level priorities as the city requires. But in this case, it's almost like a separate force, if you will. And the operators, the tow truck operators, would be compensated fairly enough that there's an incentive for them to assist us with this enforcement piece. So I'll leave it there. Any other questions from members? Seeing none, so we have a motion. All in favor, any opposed? That carries. Okay, and with that, we now have completed our Public Works and Engineering section. Mr. Clerk, do we have any questions from members of the public?
There are none, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and so now we start our Community Services section. Pass it on to Chair Santos.
Thank you. We're almost there. Okay, community services. We have nothing on the community services agenda except for councillor question period. Do any members of council have any questions? Seeing none, public question period. Mr. Clerk, anything on community services or the next general public question period?
There are no questions, Chair Santos, on either.
Amazing. Any questions regarding the referred matters list, which is published quarterly on the city website? I see none. Motion from Councillor Brar to, oh, no motion. That's it. Just nothing on the referred matters list. Last one is adjournment. Hooray! Our next meeting of Committee of Council is March 29th, 9:30. Motion moved by Councillor Brar to adjourn today's meeting. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. That carries. Make sure to check out the markers, the Makers Market downstairs supporting women in business, starting at 2 p.m. and the event at 6 p.m.